Chapter 312. Holding back the urge to cry, Su Chenxi said, I see. Dad, you should go to bed too. I'm going to bed. Get up and have a glass of milk. I've heated it up. Drink it before you go to bed, said Song Yifan. Su Chenxi did not want to get up, but she did not want to let him down. She stood up, walked to the door barefoot and opened it. However, it was not Song Yifan who she saw, but her first reaction was to close the door. However, Li Xiqing moved faster and blocked the door. Su Chenxi slammed the door hard and there was a strong resistance when the door was closed. Bang. Ah. Li Xiqing let out an exaggerated scream. Su Chenxi was shocked and quickly let go of the door. Seeing Li Xiqing holding his fingers, she was scared and held his hand. It was already bruised. Feeling distressed, she asked, What do you do? Does it hurt? Li Xiqing did not answer but held her with the other hand that was not injured. Su Chenxi was startled. Looking up, she saw a pair of eyes as deep as a lake. Suddenly annoyed, she struggled to push him away. However, how could she resist his strength? No matter how hard she tried, he did not move. Su Chenxi was annoyed. Let go. My hand hurts. Li Xiqing looked at her pitifully. It's all your fault. You still want to drive me away. You are so heartless. Su Chenxi felt a bit guilty and immediately shut up. Looking down at his fingers, she found that they were bruised, which looked a bit scary. It looked like it was hurting a lot. What do you do? Does it hurt? It hurts, Li Xiqing complained. Su Chenxi felt a bit distressed. However, seeing the smirk in his eyes, she immediately turned around and yelled, You are a man. You are so fragile. How dare you say that? Song Yifan did not know whether to laugh or cry. Could a man not get hurt? A man would also hurt when his fingers were pinched. However, Li Xiqing said, Yes. That's why I need my wife to comfort me. His pitiful tone made Su Chenxi feel bad. She looked at him again and asked in a low voice, Does it hurt? Yes, it hurts. Unable to watch it anymore, Song Yifan immediately turned around and left. Su Chenxi took his hand, walked into the bathroom, turned on the faucet and flushed it. Blood clots are difficult to treat, but cold water can relieve the pain. Li Xiqing's eyes became softer. Looking down, he found that she was still not wearing shoes. Hugging her with his big hand, she exclaimed and heard his voice. Step on my foot. Su Chenxi looked down and found that her snow-white feet were a little red. It was cold. She didn't stand on ceremony and stepped on his foot, turned off the tap and said, Let go. What are you doing? Wear your shoes. Why are you wearing shoes? Go get some ice from the fridge. He took her in his arms and walked to the kitchen happily. Opening the fridge, he asked, How much do you want? 1. She said. And a towel. Where can I get a towel? Bathroom. Holding her in his arms, he went into the bathroom and took out a towel. What about now? Li Xiqing looked down at her. He found that she was blushing like an apple. Hearing his words, she said weakly, The sofa. Chapter 313. Su Chenxi blushed even more and let him carry her to the sofa. She took the thing in his hand, wrapped the ice in a towel and put it on his hand. His big hand was grabbed by her soft palm. The cold feeling came from her fingers and went straight to the tip of his heart. Li Xiqing's eyes became softer and whispered, I found Rong Rue. Su Chenxi paused, looked up at him and was slightly surprised. Rong Rue. Yes, he and Tang Menjing planned to abort the child and then frame you. You'd better not contact Tang Menjing during this time. Su Chenxi was slightly shocked. This was indeed Tang Menjing's style, but how did he know? You were eavesdropping? Eavesdropping? Li Xiqing did not like the word eavesdropping. He frowned and corrected her, To be exact, I was eavesdropping. Unfortunately, there was no recording. Otherwise, if he played it to her at this time, he would be completely cleared of suspicion. Su Chenxi blinked and looked puzzled. Li Xiqing explained, Rong Rue pretended to be a doctor and went to catch up with Tang Menjing when she was in the hospital. Therefore, she was caught red-handed by him. You arrested Rong Rue? With Li Xiqing's personality, he would definitely not let it go. Sure enough, Li Xiqing looked at her with admiration and nodded. Yes, locked in a secret place. Ah, that's not good. If his family finds out, Rong Rue was from the capital. Although she did not know what he did for a living, when Qingyu gave birth to a child in her previous lifetime, his family sent 12 people, surrounding an old man who personally gave Qingyu's daughter a name. That was enough to rival the Li family. What I want is to let them know. Daring to break into the Li family's territory and hurt his people, Li Xiqing did not intend to let him go from the beginning. The power of the Rong family and the Li family had always been equal. Now it was the Rong family who offended them first. How could they not fight back? Su Qianxi was not particularly smart, and she knew nothing about politics. However, hearing what he said, she was relieved and asked, "Then what about Tang Menjing?" This name had always been a thorn in Su Qianxi's heart. As time passed, it became deeper and deeper. In the hospital, Li Xiqing still wanted to say something, but his phone suddenly rang. Was Qingyu. "Boss, Mr. Rong pretended to have a seizure. I called the doctor, but he injured the doctor and took your mother hostage." She picked up the phone and heard Qingyu's voice. However, he did not turn on the speaker, so she could not hear what Qingyu said. Li Xiqing frowned more and more. In the end, his eyes darkened. "My mother?" "Yes." "What is she doing there?" She paused and said weakly, "I thought you asked her to come." Li Xiqing's eyes darkened and he said in a low voice, "I know." Try to calm him down. "I'll be right there." "All right." Hanging up the phone, Li Xiqing got off the sofa under Su Qianxi's surprised gaze. "Wait a minute." Li Xiqing looked down and rubbed her head. He said gently, "I have something to do. You rest here for a while. I will pick you up when I'm done." Oh. Although she did not know what had happened, seeing that Li Xiqing was in a hurry, it must be something serious. However, didn't he say he would take her home? Chapter 3:14. Su Qianxi was a bit disappointed. Suddenly her eyes lit up. Can I go with you?" However, he swallowed the words back. "Yes." Su Qianxi shook her head and said, "Go ahead." He was a bit reluctant to take her home. However, thinking that Qin Shuhua might have been kidnapped by Rong Rue, he felt a bit uneasy. He said gently, "Go to bed early. It's too late. I'll pick you up tomorrow." "It's okay. You go ahead." Su Qianxi stood up and pushed him to the door. Li Xiqing looked down at her feet and complained, "Why do you hate wearing shoes so much? In ancient times you would be called a slut." Then he picked her up. "It's getting cold. Remember to wear shoes at all times." "Okay." Su Qianxi was put in bed and watched him leave. When the door was closed, Su Qianxi's heart suddenly became empty. She didn't want him to go, even though she had proposed a divorce to him today. But when she saw that he had come to find her, she regretted it. However, at the same time, she was also thankful for his opposition and his determination. That's it. Su Qianxi adjusted her sleeping position and closed her eyes. However, she could not fall asleep no matter how she tossed and turned in bed. Taking a breath, she finally picked up her phone. She browsed Weibo and clicked on Su Qian's posts. 80% of them were poisonous advertisements. After laughing for a while, Su Qianxi clicked on her Weibo and found that her fans had increased a lot. Originally, there were only a few zombie fans, but now there were tens of thousands of them. Seeing more than 80,000 fans, Su Qianxi clicked on the ones related to her, all of which were comments on her album. The Maldives, playing piano under wisteria, wedding photos, banquet photos, and all kinds of small photos of her life. There were thousands of comments at the bottom. A straightforward girl, Su Qianxi, Mr. Li, don't cry. Stand up and masturbate. Trust President Li. Tang and President Li have been childhood sweethearts for so many years. Any man with a little bit of interest would have already slept with her. Why wait until after marriage to cheat on her? Unparalleled Q18, Su Qianxi, my goddess is so beautiful. I'm a fan now. She's perfect. One night 8 times, unparalleled Q18. Of course, my goddess is the most beautiful. She is not even on the same level as Mr. Tang. Because I'm cute, Su Qianxi, Mr. Tang is too shameless. Mr. Li, don't pay attention to her. Just like President Li said, she is delusional. Su Qianxi read one by one, and her heart was full of happiness. Looking through the album, she found a recent photo with him and posted it on Weibo. Su Qianxi, I believe you. Good night. Within 10 seconds, Su Qianxi. Good. Love money, love modesty, love thousand Su Ci. What the F*** CK late at night, single dogs say that they have been stuffed with dog food and are very satisfied with your photo. Su Qianxi chuckled and replied, just get used to it. Love money, love Chanchiankiankian Su Ci. F*** CK, I got flipped by the goddess, I'm going to buy a lottery ticket. Excited, there were a lot of comments below, all clamoring for a change. Su Qianxi replied for a while and felt sleepy. She charged her phone and put it on the bedside table. Chapter 3:15. Jiangzhou was located on the edge of the center of Kingstown. When Li Xiqing drove to the villa in Jiangzhou, it was already past 12 o'clock. Sitting in the living room of the villa, Qingyu looked at Rong Rue, who was tied up like a fried dough twist on the ground, and yawned. Hearing the doorbell, a housekeeper immediately went to open the door. When Li Xiqing walked in, Rong Rui, who was lying on the ground, sneered. "Coward, you're finally here." Li Xiqing ignored him and looked at Qingyu. "Where's my mom?" "Andy was frightened just now. I asked her to rest in the room for a while first." "Which room?" Qingyu led him to the room where Qin Shuhua was. Qin Shuhua seemed to be shocked, put away her phone and said, "Why didn't you knock on the door when you came in?" "You scared me." Li Xiqing glanced at the phone in her hand and asked, "Who are you talking to?" "Your father." Qin Shuhua's eyes were a bit evasive as she replied, "I was scared to death. You actually caught the young master of the Rong family. I have to tell your father." "You don't have to say it. I have an idea. This guy killed your grandson and almost caused your daughter-in-law to be raped. Everything that Tang Menjing did before must have something to do with him." Qin Shuhua was a bit surprised, covered her mouth and exclaimed, "No way, is it really him?" "Yes." Li Xiqing responded quietly and walked up. "Are you okay? I'll send you back first. Don't come here in the future." Qin Shuhua shook her head, evading his eyes and said, "I heard that you arranged a lot of people here, so I came to have a look. I didn't expect that guy to lie to me. It doesn't matter whether he lied to you or you let him out yourself." Li Xiqing's voice was a bit cold. "Mom, I know you like Tang Menjing, but I believe you have seen the video at the party clearly. This kind of woman, let alone myself, will not be able to pass Grandpa's test. After so many years, you should know what Grandpa is like. I hope you don't get on his bad side." Li Xiqing's voice was cold. Of course, Qin Shuhua knew, but she had her own difficulties. How could she be willing to let Tang Menjing coerce her and harm her daughter-in-law like this? But Qin Shuhua let out a deep sigh and said, "I understand. I will go back by myself. You stay here and deal with this guy. Let me walk you out." "It's too late." Li Xiqing followed Qin Shuhua and glanced at her phone. When they walked out of the living room, Rong Rui had already climbed up. His hands were tied, but his legs were free. He stood not far from the sofa, surrounded by a dozen bodyguards. Rong Rui stood in the middle of the crowd, looking at them with a faint smile. Qin Shuhua walked through the center of the living room and went straight to the door. Li Xiqing followed closely. Suddenly, Rong Rui moved and rushed toward Qin Shuhua. Under the fluorescent light in the living room, she clearly saw a silver reflection on the side of his mouth. His pupils shrank as he shouted anxiously, "Be careful." Seeing that he was getting closer and closer, Qin Shuhua was so scared that she forgot to move. Suddenly she felt a weight on her body. Qin Shuhua clearly felt that she was wrapped by a strong body, and then she heard the scream of Qingyu. Chapter 316. Seeing the bright red liquid splashing out, Qin Shuhua's face suddenly turned pale. No one expected that Rong Rui would have a weapon at this time. When Qin Shuhua passed by Rong Rui, she did not deliberately avoid him, but she never thought that she would hurt her son. Tears suddenly came out, and Qin Shuhua quickly held her son and shouted, "Xiqing." Qingyu looked at the dozen bodyguards around her and pinned Rong Rui down. One of the bodyguards took the little thing out of his mouth. Squatting down to take a closer look, Qingyu found that it was a switchblade. It was very small, but the knife was very sharp. The blade was about 3 or 4 centimeters long, and the whole knife was covered with blood. Li Xiqing's dark suit was half soaked, and his face suddenly became pale. Noticing Qin Shuhua's excitement, Li Xiqing looked much calmer and said slowly, "Mom, I'm fine." Qin Shuhua was even more anxious, sobbing and looking at his wound. "You're fine? There's so much blood. Call an ambulance. Call a doctor." Li Xiqing's face became paler and paler, and blood had directly dripped down his sleeve. He gasped in pain but still said, "It's okay. Don't cry. Qingyu, take my mother back first." "Okay." Qingyu responded. "Hunter, take me to the hospital." Li Xiqing could not hold it anymore, and his hand covering the wound was already wet. Qin Shuhua covered her mouth and sobbed. Looking at Rong Rui, who had been pinned down by the bodyguards, she strode over and slapped him hard in the face. "Bastard, you ungrateful son of a b***t." She almost listened to Tang Menjing and let him go. However, she did not expect that this guy would be so cruel. If this knife had been cut somewhere else, he might have lost his life. The more she thought about it, the more scared Qin Shuhua was. She lifted her foot and kicked him in the lower abdomen, cursing, "Bastard." Rong Rui screamed, but then he laughed very happily. Qingyu stared at him and whispered, "Pervert." Li Xiqing gave her a deep look, his face still as calm as before. Sloppy, vicious, a hacker and highly skilled. This was Li Xiqing's impression of him. No matter how ruthless the Li family was, they were still good people and the pillars of the country. Ever since he was a child, Li Xiqing had been taught that if Li Sun did not offend him, he would not offend him. When he first caught Rong Rui, he was in a hurry to find Su Qianxi and had no time to deal with this guy. However, he never expected that Rong Rui would be so sick. Not only did he carry a knife with him, but he even hid a switchblade in his mouth. It was hard for him to imagine that a descendant of a minister or general would do something like this. However, Li Xiqing had no time to think. The wound was bleeding more and more and his vision was a little dark. Looking at Cheng Yu, he said, "Don't tell my wife about what happened today. Mom, you too. Don't tell your family." His voice was getting weaker and weaker. Seeing that, the hunter picked him up and ran to the door. By the time he finished treating the wound, it was already midnight. Li Xiqing fainted because of blood loss, but fortunately his nerves were not damaged. After stitches and a blood transfusion, he was sent to the ICU. In the dream, Li Xiqing and Rong Rui were fighting. Su Qianxi was so scared that she screamed, but she could not stop them. However, a sudden explosion blew the two of them into ashes, leaving not even a speck of dust behind. Chapter 317. What a terrible nightmare. There was no sign at all. It was the first time that she had had such a dream, and she felt more and more uneasy. She picked up the phone and dialed Li Xiqing's number, but the call could not be connected. Her heart felt more and more empty. Why couldn't he get through at this time? She checked the time. It was past 2 a.m. Li Xiqing had always been a light sleeper. If he heard the phone ringing, he would definitely pick it up. Could it be that the phone was turned off or there was no signal? Su Qianxi was lost in her thoughts. When she dialed the fifth number, the call was connected. "Honey." Hearing Li Xiqing's voice, Su Qianxi was finally relieved. Her eyes suddenly became red and she asked, "What took you so long?" "I'm in a meeting in the United States. I may have to go on a business trip tomorrow." Su Qianxi was a bit suspicious. In her memory, there did not seem to be any important projects recently. Why was Li Xiqing so busy? "What projects do you have to have a meeting so late?" "It's past 2 a.m. You didn't sleep well today. Go to bed early." "Yes, why are you still up?" "I can't sleep. I had a nightmare." Su Qianxi felt wronged. She bent her legs and rested her chin on her knees. "I dreamed that you had a conflict with Rong Rui, and then something happened." On the other side of the phone, Li Xiqing slightly paused and looked at the hunter next to him. The hunter was bewildered by the stare and blinked his eyes in bewilderment. "Silly, dreams are all opposite, which means I am very good." Hearing that, Su Qianxi was relieved and said, "Okay, then go to bed early. I will not disturb you. When is your flight?" 6 o'clock. "Remember to have a good rest on the plane." "Okay, good night." "Good night." Hanging up the phone, Li Xiqing's sharp eyes fell on the hunter. "You told her?" "Who?" That was the hunter's first reaction, but he quickly recovered. "No, she called several times, but I did not dare to answer." In the end, he woke up and answered the phone himself. "Tell Qingyu not to tell her. I don't want her to worry." As he spoke, he lifted the quilt and was about to get out of bed. The hunter was startled and exclaimed, "Boss, the doctor said you'd better not move. The wound is very deep. I need to go to the bathroom." "Oh, let me help you. I'm already married." The hunter was speechless. A married woman can't even be helped to the bathroom by a man? Even keeping one's chastity as jade isn't this kind of law-abiding. However, the hunter was smart enough to call Qingyu after he left the ward. Qingyu sat in the living room and watched him being tied up. This time he couldn't even move his fingers, let alone his feet. "Got it. She did not call to ask me. Even if she did, I would not tell her." Qingyu yawned, feeling sleepy. "That's it. Goodbye." Leaning on the sofa, she fell asleep. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, the door was opened and she woke up with a fright. It was the big boss. "Aren't you hospitalized?" He did not look at her but at Rong Rui, who was sleeping on the ground. "Close the door and beat the dog." Li Xiqing's steps were very steady, and his face was very gloomy. However, because of his slightly pale face, he looked more indifferent and sharp. The hunter hurriedly closed the door, and then he heard an order from Li Xiqing. "Keep him alive. As for the rest, you can do whatever you want." The bodyguards did not know how to speak, but when they heard Li Xiqing's order, their eyes all lit up. Chapter 318. In fact, Rong Rui had already woken up when he heard Li Xiqing's first sentence. At this moment, hearing such a direct and perverted order, he suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, "Li Xiqing. My surname is Rong. Rong Haiwei is my uncle, and my grandfather is Rong Jingsheng. If you do anything to me, my uncle and grandfather will not let you go. Li Xiqing heard that, curled his lips and said slowly, really? I am just playing with a thief who broke into my family's territory. What does it have to do with them? Hearing that, Rong-Rui panicked. Indeed, Kingstown was the territory of the Li family. After all, Rong-Rui was just an outsider. Although the Rong family had a high status in the capital, they were evenly matched with the Li family. And he was the one who offended them first. Was he going to be defeated today? Rong-Rui's face turned pale and he shouted uneasily, Li, do it. These two cold words directly excited these bodyguards who had suppressed their emotions for many years. One by one, they moved their muscles and surrounded Rong-Rui with a smile on their faces. Qingyu was creeped out and shivered on the side. Go back first and go to work tomorrow afternoon. Have a good rest. Li Xiqing's words were so considerate. Qingyu was so moved that she almost cried. She nodded and quickly went out the door. Hunter watched with great interest. He crossed his arms and said, Boss, do you think these bodyguards like men? Rong-Rui's current situation was completely like a little white rabbit in a wolf's den. His face was full of fear, looking like a little submissive. TSK so poor. Li Xiqing looked at him coldly and responded, That's true. The hunter was so shocked that he almost fell. That's true? What? These bodyguards had always liked men? Holy shit, this is way too explosive. The hunter looked at Rong-Rui's eyes with even more sympathy. At the same time there was a strong fear. Fortunately, he didn't completely fail the last time. Otherwise, would the big boss also reward him to this group of hungry and thirsty bodyguards? Rong-Rui screamed as he took a solid punch to the face. Then the ropes on his body were untied. Rong-Rui struggled with his hands and feet trying to escape. However, Rong-Rui was not tall. He was only 178 centimeters, which was of medium height. In front of the tall and burly bodyguards, there was no way they could fight back. A bodyguard pushed him to the ground and bent his knees to press his waist. Under Rong-Rui's frightened and angry eyes, he slapped him directly in the face. Pok, pok, pok. Then another bodyguard lifted him up, and with a tug, the sound of clothes being torn was heard. Rong-Rui was scared and shouted, Li Xiqing, let's talk. Unmoved, Li Xiqing looked at him coldly. Rong-Rui's pants were taken off. Sobbing, he shouted desperately, Li Xiqing, I am the young master of the Rong family. You can't do this to me. The screams almost broke through the sky. The hunter could not bear to look at it. Crossing his legs, he said, Boss, are you going too far? This guy is also. Do you want to try? The hunter immediately shut up and took a step back. Chapter 319. The hunter covered his face and could not bear to watch any more. A dozen strong men and a dozen bodyguards. If they all attacked him at once, well, it would be inconvenient. If they took turns, it would be. The hunter sympathized with Rong-Rui, but Li Xiqing looked indifferent, as if he did not feel much about what was about to happen. People can't be compared with each other, and men can't be compared with each other either. The gap between him and the big boss was so huge that the hunter felt ashamed of his inferiority. Being lifted up, Rong-Rui screamed, Li Xiqing, you will regret it. Ah, don't touch me there, pervert. Let go. As soon as Rong-Rui shouted, the bodyguard really let go of him. With a bang, Rong-Rui fell face first on the ground. His nose hit the ground and a strong smell of blood came out. Then a bodyguard sat on him and Rong-Rui clearly felt that the man's body was reacting to him. Rong-Rui twisted crazily and yelled, No, Li Xiqing. You are so heartless. You will get what you deserve. Are you cursing me? Li Xiqing slightly raised an eyebrow and suddenly chuckled. He glanced at Su Qianxi casually and sat on the sofa behind him. The warm yellow light in the living room shone on him, making him look like a god. His facial features were exquisite and his temperament was impeccable. Crossing his legs, he looked at Rong-Rui and said slowly, Do you want me to let you go? Yes, of course. No one wanted to be humiliated by a man, especially a dozen at once. They really did. Rong-Rui would not be able to keep his life. Beg me. Li Xiqing's thin lips parted and he uttered two words. Staring at him, Rong-Rui gritted his teeth and did not speak. It depends on whether Mr. Rong is sincere. There was a struggle on Rong-Rui's face. Suddenly, the bodyguard sitting on him moved, which scared Rong-Rui and he yelled, I beg you. Li Xiqing raised an eyebrow and looked at him calmly. I beg you, Li Xiqing, let me go. Rong-Rui blushed. He looked at Li Xiqing and said, Please let me go. I will never mess with you again. I swear in the name of the Rong family. If I break my promise, I will be struck by lightning. There was a trace of satisfaction in Li Xiqing's calm and indifferent eyes, but he still curled his lips and said, "It seems that Mr. Rong does not know what beg means." Rong Rui's expression changed and he gritted his teeth. "Don't go too far." Li Xiqing waved his hand, and the bodyguard behind him moved again. "Wait." Rong Rui threw caution to the wind. His lower body was bare. It was definitely not a good thing to be faced by a man like this. "Make him go away first." Li Xiqing waved his hand. The bodyguard got up automatically. Rong Rui got up and knelt in front of Li Xiqing. He gritted his teeth and said, "Although a man has gold under his knees, he only has one life. Li Xiqing, please let me go." "That's not what I want." Rong Rui became angry and rushed up. However, before he reached Li Xiqing, he was stopped by several bodyguards. Rong Rui cursed, "Fu K Li Xiqing, are you messing with me?" Li Xiqing slowly took out his cell phone, waved it in front of him and then dialed Tang Menjing's number. Chapter 320. Rong Rui struggled hard, but the bodyguards behind him were too strong for him to break free. Gritting his teeth, he cursed, "Li Xiqing, you're despicable." Tang Menjing's call was quickly connected. Li Xiqing put the call on speaker and waved his hand. The bodyguards covered Rong Rui's mouth to prevent him from making a sound. "Hello?" Tang Menjing sounded a bit surprised. Looking at the time, it was already 3 a.m. Why was Li Xiqing calling her at this hour? "Brother Xiqing, is that you?" "It's me." Leaning back on the sofa, Li Xiqing looked at Rong Rui, who was struggling harder and harder, and said slowly, "Did my mother tell you?" Tang Menjing's heart skipped a beat. Did he know something? Feeling a bit scared, Tang Menjing asked cautiously, "What did Auntie say to you?" "I was injured. I was stabbed when I was beating Rong Rui." Tang Menjing was startled. She really did not know about this. Her first reaction was to ask, "Are you okay? Where are you hurt? Is it serious?" The series of questions were full of concern. However, her focus was only on Li Xiqing was stabbed, not Rong Rui was beaten. Rong Rui clearly noticed the difference in treatment and felt uncomfortable. He wanted to warn her not to fall into the trap, but the bodyguards behind him firmly held him down and did not let him move at all. Li Xiqing changed his posture, appreciating Rong Rui's state, and replied, "It's quite serious. My artery was hurt." This was the truth, but it was not Li Xiqing's style to tell the truth. The hunter knew it well and felt sorry for Tang Menjing and Rong Rui. Although he did not know what Li Xiqing wanted to do, it was definitely not a good thing. Tang Menjing did not doubt him at all and asked anxiously, "Then what should we do?" "Where are you now?" 2097 Villa in Jiangzhou. "Okay, I'll call an ambulance for you right away." "No need. The wound has been treated. You just need to come," Li Xiqing said. Tang Menjing was dazed. "Me? Yes, I want to see you." Tang Menjing's heart suddenly raced as she said incredulously, "Brother Xiqing? If it's not convenient, of course." Tang Menjing said hurriedly, but immediately realized that she was being too impatient. Shyly she whispered, "I'll be right there. Brother Xiqing, wait for me." Li Xiqing hung up and looked at Rong Rui, who had been quiet. "She is coming. What do you think she will choose?" The bodyguard loosened Rong Rui's mouth and the latter immediately screamed, "What the hell do you want?" What did he mean by tricking Tang Menjing into coming here? Showing off Tang Menjing's love for him? Or was Li Xiqing deliberately showing off his charm, telling him that the woman he liked actually loved him? Thinking of Tang Menjing's joyful words, he felt terrible. She had never been like that to him. Li Xiqing curled his lips and said slowly, "You will know in a moment." Looking at Li Xiqing's expression, Rong Rui suddenly thought of one word, danger. This man was deeper than Rong Rui had imagined. He had a bad feeling, but no matter how he guessed, he could not figure out what Li Xiqing wanted to do. Chapter 321. When Tang Menjing arrived, it was already 4 in the morning. As soon as she entered, she heard Rong Rui screaming. Tang Menjing was shocked and walked in. Rong Rui was surrounded by a dozen bodyguards, half kneeling on the ground. He was not wearing anything. Quickly looking away, Tang Menjing looked at Li Xiqing. Seeing the blood on Li Xiqing's hand, she asked nervously, "Brother Xiqing, are you okay?" Li Xiqing did not answer but said, "Get a glass of water for Miss Tang." The hunter took the order and put a bottle of water in front of Tang Menjing. "This is the only one. Just drink it." Tang Menjing was a bit dissatisfied with the hunter's perfunctory attitude and looked at Li Xiqing, hoping that he would stand up for her. However, Li Xiqing did not seem to see it and said, "He confessed. Hearing that, both Tang Minjing and Rong Rui were dazed. Confessed? What did he confess? Tang Minjing was a bit nervous and looked away. What? What do you mean? Mr. Rong said that the child in your belly is not mine. He changed the DNA himself and hacked the internal records of the genetics department, so the DNA comparison showed that it is related to my father's. Tang Minjing's expression changed and looked at Rong Rui. Rong Rui's expression also changed. He had never thought that Li Xiqing would ask Tang Minjing to come for this purpose. This was what it meant to fabricate right and wrong, turn black and white upside down, and lie. You. Before Rong Rui finished, his mouth was covered by the bodyguard. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not get rid of it. In fact, the child in your belly belongs to a foreigner, which is clearly shown in the video he hacked. Your next plan is to find a chance to meet my wife and frame her. Nonsense. Tang Minjing's face turned pale and she suddenly stood up. How could I do such a thing? Brother Xiqing, I love you sincerely. This child is really your child. Besides, Chenxi and I are good friends. Even if we are not on good terms now, I would not do such a thing. Tang Minjing looked aggrieved. Brother Xiqing, we grew up together. Don't you know me? How could I be such a person? She had no idea how much of their conversation that afternoon had been overheard by him. However, judging from Li Xiqing's current attitude, he should not have heard much. Tang Minjing made up her mind and denied, even if you don't believe me, you should believe me. Auntie was the one who accompanied me to do the paternity test. No matter what, you should believe in your mother, right? He hacked all the surveillance and data. There's no proof no matter what you say. Gritting her teeth, Tang Minjing looked at him and said, Why did you do this to me? I know how you feel about me, but you can't do this to me. Don't you know how much this kind of thing hurts a woman? Rong Rui struggled less and less as he stared at her. Rong Rui, I have had enough of you. So, what he did has nothing to do with you? Li Xiqing asked in a soft voice. No. But he said he's with you. Nonsense. Tang Minjing denied and hurriedly said, Brother Xiqing, I am not that kind of person. Fine. Li Xiqing looked at her coldly and whispered, I said if what he said is true, let him go. If he lied to me, I will reward him to my men and let them enjoy him to their heart's content. In the end, he added, they all like men and they are very interested in Rong Rui. Tang Minjing's pupils contracted as she looked at the burly bodyguards behind Rong Rui, shocked. With a complicated look, Rong Rui looked at Tang Minjing and begged for help. Minjing, I don't want to die. Help me, I will ask you one last time. Is what he said true or false? In other words, Tang Minjing could decide Rong Rui's fate. If it was true, he would live. Chapter 322. If it was true, he would live. If it was false, he would rather die. Tang Minjing pinched her arm, looking at Rong Rui who was begging for help. She suddenly panicked. As if to cooperate with Li Xiqing, one of the bodyguards had moved behind Rong Rui and put his hand on Rong Rui's lower body. Rong Rui shivered and begged Tang Minjing, Minjing, I have done so much for you. I don't ask you to repay me, but you can't just watch me die. If he really fell into the hands of these people, Rong Rui was afraid. Everyone knew what the result would be. Tang Minjing was not a fool. On the contrary, she was very smart. However, because of her cleverness, Tang Minjing knew very well what would happen to her if she confessed at this time. Clearly seeing the struggle on her face, Rong Rui was delighted. He knew it. He knew it. She would not just watch him die, would she? She would not leave him to die, would she? Rong Rui. Tang Minjing's voice was dry and hoarse, looking indifferent. Rong Rui's excitement seemed to have been poured with a bucket of cold water, freezing his heart. No way, no way. However, what Tang Minjing said next made him collapse. She said, How can I confess to something I did not do? His strength seemed to be drained and he could not get up again. The hunter looked at Rong Rui sympathetically and asked, Boss, what should we do? Li Xiqing gave Tang Minjing a deep look and said slowly, He is yours. The bodyguards were excited, looking at Rong Rui with unspeakable passion and excitement. They rubbed their hands and surrounded Rong Rui. And Rong Rui was no longer struggling like before. His eyes were blank, staring at Tang Minjing. His heart was dead. There is nothing sadder than a dead heart, and the death of a person. Letting his body be manipulated, Rong Rui no longer showed any signs of struggling. Tang Minjing did not dare to look at his eyes. She turned her head and looked away. She knew that he was good to her. But she could not. If she admitted it now, it would be a slap in the face. At that time she would be finished. The Tang family would be finished. Everything would be finished. She couldn't ruin the entire Tang family for her own selfishness. For now, he could only borrow Su Qianxi's hand. Tang Minjing's eyes reddened as she heard the rustling sound not far away. Her heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. However, he did not utter a single word. "Let's go inside." His voice was deep and meaningful. "Don't do it in the living room. There are women there." The bodyguards took the order and dragged Rong Rue into the room. Tang Minjing squeezed her hands and looked at the room. Seeing Rong Rue's desperate eyes, he almost went crazy. His eyes were scarlet and he roared, "Tang Minjing, ah!" The door to the room wasn't closed tightly, it was just left ajar. After a while, a suppressed roar came from inside the room. There was also the sound of their bodies colliding. Every sound was stimulating her nerves. Rong Rue, bang. The door was closed, blocking all the sound inside. Tang Minjing fell onto the sofa, her face pale. Chapter 323. She was the one who pushed him into the abyss. "This is the house I prepared for you. Do you like it?" Li Xiqing suddenly said with a meaningful tone. Tang Minjing was a bit absent-minded. Hearing his words, she looked at Li Xiqing. However, she was caught off guard and met his deep eyes. He said, "Take this house as a meeting gift from me to my child. From today onwards you can live here." Child, a gift to the child? So he had accepted it? Tang Minjing looked at him in a daze. "You can have all the bodyguards in the house. They will be responsible for your safety." Putting one hand in his pocket, Li Xiqing gazed at her. Under the light in the living room, Li Xiqing seemed to have a lazy glow, making him look like he had walked out of a painting she had secretly drawn. So dazzling and charming, Tang Minjing's heart skipped a beat, looking at Li Xiqing. He was looking at her. He was really looking at her. She had waited for a long time. Tang Minjing's eyes suddenly became red. Looking at him, she called, "Brother Xiqing?" After so many years, Tang Minjing had thought that what she wanted was just a dream. She thought that he was just a dream for her. But this house was a gift for her child. He believed it. He really thought that this was their child. The hunter felt his heart ache as he listened to the story. Was Li Xiqing serious? Although this house was not in the center of the city, it was still very large and would cost at least tens of millions. Was he really going to give it away like this? The hunter was a bit shocked. Seeing Tang Minjing's reaction, he immediately thought of a honey trap. However, what did Li Xiqing want? "Get some rest. It's almost dawn," Li Xiqing said thoughtfully. Li Xiqing said thoughtfully, "Later, a nanny will come over and take care of you from now on." It was the first time that Tang Minjing had seen Li Xiqing so gentle. Bodyguards and housekeepers were all arranged for her, and by Li Xiqing himself? This was something that Tang Minjing could not even imagine in the past. All of a sudden she felt warm and asked, "Brother Xiqing, why are you so nice to me all of a sudden?" Hearing that, Li Xiqing's eyes darkened as he glanced at her slightly bulging belly. Tang Minjing finally understood that he probably really regarded the child as his own flesh and blood. Secretly delighted, Tang Minjing became more and more excited. In this way, when Su Qianxi framed her to have an abortion, his reaction must be very interesting. At that time it would be killing two birds with one stone. On the one hand, she could clear her name and the Tang family's name. On the other hand, Su Qianxi could no longer stand by his side. With the help of Qin Shuhua, she could replace Su Qianxi and become the new mistress of the Li family. Tang Minjing was very excited. She seemed to be getting closer and closer to her goal. Bang! A muffled sound suddenly came from Rong Rue's room. Tang Minjing was startled and came back to her senses. The door to the room was opened and a bodyguard walked out. There was a trace of panic on his face. He did not know how to speak, so he could only gesture with his hands. Chapter 324. Suicide. Hearing these two words, Tang Minjing's heart suddenly trembled. Seeing the bodyguard nodding, Li Xiqing looked at Tang Minjing. She covered her mouth and turned pale with fright. There was shock and fear, but there was no reluctance or sadness. Li Xiqing seemed to have seen through her feelings for Rong Rue and couldn't help feeling sorry for him. Waving his hand, Li Xiqing said quietly, "Take him to the hospital." It had been 3 days. Rong Rue had been trapped here for 3 days. His hands were handcuffed to the bed. Only when he was physically required would he be taken to the bathroom by 2 strong bodyguards. For the rest of the time he was trapped in bed, without freedom or direction. Rong Rue looked at the ceiling, his eyes empty. Instead of being sent to the hospital, he was sent to another villa under Li Xiqing's name. Just at the door there were 2 bodyguards and 2 nannies guarding his bed. He had to say that Li Xiqing was really considerate and cunning. Rong Rue never knew that a person could be so despicable. He set him up, set Tang Minjing up, and treated him like a fool from the beginning to the end. After being dragged into the room by the bodyguards, Rong Rui almost thought that he would be killed by them. However, they took him to a screen and let him see Tang Minjing's expression clearly. Tang Minjing's fear, joy, calculation, surprise, and the look on her face after hearing that he had committed suicide. All these scenes made him disheartened. He thought that she would see him. He thought that no matter how heartless she was, she would not leave him alone. However, reality was like a fiery slap, ruthlessly slapping his face. Ha ha ha. Rong Rui smiled and looked at the ceiling, but there were tears in his eyes, like a wounded clown, sad and ridiculous. Hey, what are you doing? A teasing voice came in and Rong Rui looked at the door. It was Li Xiqing's assistant, the woman who had fought with him twice. She looked at him, her eyes smiling into a beautiful crescent. Why don't we talk? Rong Rui was sent to the hospital and Li Xiqing followed him. Tang Minjing fell asleep in the room Li Xiqing arranged for her. When she woke up, it was already noon. She stretched her back comfortably, and before she could say anything, a maid came up to greet her respectfully. Her attitude was humble and she bent her knees respectfully. This was simply the same treatment as imperial concubines in ancient times. Tang Minjing was very satisfied. She squinted and enjoyed the maid's service. During the whole process, Tang Minjing did not say a word to the maid. After washing up, Tang Minjing went out for breakfast and walked elegantly to the garden. She found that the backyard and the front yard were surrounded by 2-meter-high walls with beautiful murals. The two maids quietly followed Tang Minjing and walked around the entire villa. In the afternoon, Tang Minjing went back to her room with satisfaction. Pushing open the window, he wanted to take a look at the scenery outside. To his surprise, he saw the backyard garden outside the window. Looking further ahead, he saw a thick wall. The exquisite murals painted in the style of ancient Roman mythology depicted a touching legend. It was already autumn, but the flowers and grass were still flowers and grass. The wind was blowing, the grass was swaying, and the flowers were shaking. Chapter 325. Leaving the window open, Tang Minjing went to the bed and sat down. She took out her phone and sent the photo she had just taken to Su Qianxi. The first class in the afternoon had just begun. Not long after the professor arrived, Su Qianxi's phone rang. Feeling embarrassed, Su Qianxi quickly turned her phone on silent mode. With a series of vibrations, pictures appeared on the notification bar. The sender was Tang Minjing. Su Qianxi did not even want to open it. When she was about to put the phone in her bag and focus on the class, a few words suddenly popped up on the notification bar. Look, Brother Xiqing gave it to me. Su Qianxi narrowed her eyes and clicked on WeChat. The message was, look, the villa Brother Xiqing gave me. It's so big and comfortable. She looked at the more than 20 pictures one by one. This was the villa in Jiangzhou, where Grandpa died in her previous lifetime. It was indeed under Li Xiqing's name. After she divorced him, he gave her the villa as part of the alimony payment. However, why would Li Xiqing give it to her? Just when Su Qianxi was lost in thought, her phone vibrated again. Tang Minjing, I have to talk to you now. Brother Xiqing is here to see me? Seeing this sentence, Su Qianxi frowned. Li Xiqing went to see her? At this time? Wasn't he on a business trip? Su Qianxi, smile. About a minute or two later, Tang Minjing replied, but there was no text, just a selfie. In the photo, Tang Minjing looked a bit weak because of her pregnancy, but she had a bright smile on her face. Just behind Tang Minjing, a familiar tall figure was in the photo. His face was cold and indifferent, looking down at the documents in front of him, just like how Li Xiqing usually dealt with business. The angle of the photo was his side profile, which meant that Tang Minjing hid behind him and took the photo. Looking at the display in the background, everything was still Li Xiqing's style, just like when she first moved in her previous lifetime. Su Qianxi withdrew her hand and looked at the man in the photo incredulously. This was Li Xiqing. Wasn't he on a business trip? At this time, shouldn't he still be on the plane? Why was he in Jiangzhou? Why was he in the villa? And with Tang Minjing? After class, she couldn't wait to call Li Xiqing. The phone was turned off. She called Cheng Yu and Cheng Yu quickly answered, "Hi, madam." Su Qianxi was silent for a moment and said, "Assistant Cheng, let me ask you something. Answer me honestly." This kind of opening usually didn't mean anything good. She perked up. "Okay. Where is Mr. Li now?" Cheng Yu had an ominous feeling in her heart. Why did she feel that Lady Boss had already seen through everything? However, after thinking about it, she still said the lines she had prepared. Boss went to the United States for a meeting. I think it will be a while before he comes back. He should be on the plane right now. Really? Cheng Yu was even more nervous, but as a qualified and ethical assistant, her tone was calm and natural. Really? Oh, thank you. Chapter 326. Hanging up the phone, she could no longer sit still. There was only one thought in her mind. He lied to her, he lied to her. Quickly walking out of the school, she felt a bit uneasy and took a taxi to Jiangzhou's house. Mom, I know. Now brother Xiqing is here with me. I will take care. Tang Minjing's voice was full of sweetness. Her big eyes seemed to be fixed on Li Xiqing, not moving away at all. Sitting on the sofa, Li Xiqing had a contract in front of him. Hearing her charming voice, there was a trace of imperceptible disgust in his eyes. Tang Minjing did not notice it at all. It seemed that Mrs. Tang had said something embarrassing on the other side of the phone. With a shy face, Tang Minjing said, "Oh Mom, what are you talking about? I don't want to talk to you anymore. That's it. I'm hanging up." Her cheeks were red and her face was full of love. At this moment, Tang Minjing was indescribably seductive, mature and overflowing with the brilliance of motherhood. However, Li Xiqing was not moved and said, "I have talked to your parents. From today on you will live here. They will be responsible for your safety." Li Xiqing pointed at a row of bodyguards standing not far away. There were not many, just 20. Then he looked at another row of women, ranging in age from teenagers to 30s, all young and respectful. They will take care of your daily life. The number of maids and nannies was the same, 20. Tang Minjing was both touched and surprised. Blushing, she said, "Brother Xiqing, are you serious? Our child is not even born yet and you have already spent so much on him. When he is born you will spoil him." Li Xiqing's eyes lit up. Our child. Li Xiqing felt disgusted for no reason. Resisting the urge to leave immediately, he gazed at her with a pair of dark eyes. The complexity at the bottom of his eyes made it difficult to see what exactly he was feeling. Tang Minjing felt even more excited. Looking away, she asked nervously, What's wrong? Was it because she was particularly beautiful today? It was said that people were in high spirits when they were happy, and it was true. Tang Minjing touched her face and couldn't help curling her lips. "It won't be for nothing." Li Xiqing's voice was cold and deep. "We can get it back soon." Hearing that, Tang Minjing nodded and whispered, "If the child is like you, he will be very successful. These things are nothing. He will earn them back sooner or later." Li Xiqing glanced at her and did not explain. He stood up and said, "I should go to the hospital to change my dressing. You rest well and take care of yourself." Tang Minjing reluctantly reached out and grabbed his sleeve. "Will you come tonight?" Li Xiqing glanced at the hand and Tang Minjing felt her hand was scalded and quickly let it go. "When I'm done," he said coldly and turned to leave. Tang Minjing was a bit disappointed, but thinking of everything he had left for her, she couldn't help feeling sweet. Just wait and see. The position of Mrs. Li would be hers sooner or later. The taxi stopped near the villa. When she was about to get out, the black European-style door of the villa opened. A black Maybach slowly drove out, and Su Chenxi clearly saw the man sitting in the passenger seat. His temperament was cold and his expression indifferent. She was so familiar with him. Chapter 327. Su Chenxi's heart felt like it had been pierced by a hedgehog. It was so painful that it felt like it was about to be torn apart. Her eyes were hot and tears rolled down her cheeks. He lied to her, he lied to her. He was really here with Tang Minjing. But why wasn't he on a business trip? Didn't he go to America? Even Cheng Yu was lying to her. Taking out her phone, she clicked on the number on the top of the contact list and dialed it. This time the phone was not turned off. Su Chenxi glanced at the time. It was past 5 p.m. With a hint of sarcasm in her eyes, she suddenly chuckled. So dedicated. At this time the plane had already arrived in New York. Turning on the phone at this time was indeed perfect. The call was quickly connected. Before he spoke, Su Chenxi said, "Honey." He did not expect that she would be so passionate today. Hearing this word, all the gloominess was gone. Frowning, he said quietly, "Honey." These two words were said casually, but they were filled with his deep feelings and tenderness. However, in Su Chenxi's ears, it was like the ultimate punishment, trampling all her dignity on the ground. "You're on a business trip today?" "Yeah." He paused, seeming to be thinking. After about a second he said, "Just got off the plane." Liar. Su Chenxi's heart skipped a beat, and she burst into tears. She immediately covered her mouth, fearing that she would cry out loud. "What's wrong?" He asked softly, his voice extremely gentle, with the most considerate intimacy. "Is class over?" Seeing her like this, the taxi driver considerately took a tissue for her and handed it to her. She wiped her tears with the tissue, took a deep breath, and tried to make her voice sound calm. She asked, "Yeah. I just saw someone who looked like you. I thought it was you, but it turned out that I was wrong." Li Xiqing's voice sounded nice. He teased, "Did you miss me?" She frowned and blushed. After a few seconds of silence, she slowly replied, "No, not at all. Don't be sarcastic. I won't laugh at you." He leaned back in his chair and said in a low voice, "I miss you too. Liar." Su Qianxi blinked and hot tears rolled down her cheeks again. Her voice was choked with sobs. "Mr. Li, I'm so tired. So tired, so tired." She felt that she could not love him anymore. He didn't want her. He didn't like her. She knew it. She knew it all. But why did he lie to her? Since he loved Tang Menjing, why did he have to torture her in such a cruel way? What's wrong? Li Xiqing frowned and asked with concern, "Are you under a lot of pressure?" "I miss you." He finally relaxed his frown and whispered, "I'll be back soon. Good girl." Su Qianxi covered her mouth with one hand and hung up the phone. Finally, she could not help but burst into tears. When the phone was hung up, Li Xiqing's heart felt warm as if it was burning. This woman, Li Xiqing couldn't help curling his lips. However, the hunter exclaimed, "Boss, your hand is bleeding again." Li Xiqing glanced at it and did not notice when it was bleeding. At the same time he felt relieved. Fortunately, he was on a business trip. Otherwise she would be worried if she saw it. "Go to the hospital." The hunter took the order and drove in the direction of the first military hospital. Chapter 328. 2 days was not a long time. However, for Tang Menjing it was extremely difficult. "Maid, I want to eat sour plums." "Laurel, I want noodles." "What's wrong with you? You can't even do such a small thing. Brother Xiqing must have fed you for nothing." "Hey, why are you looking at me like that? Do you know who I am?" Tang Menjing ordered the maids and nannies around, satisfying her desire to be the hostess. However, at the same time she felt empty and disappointed. After ordering the maids around, Tang Menjing went to sleep. When she woke up, she was so bored that she wanted to spit bubbles. Suddenly, Tang Menjing remembered the most important thing she had not done yet. She was going to Li Xiqing's company. And she was going to ask Su Qianxi to lend her a hand. Although he had told her not to go out easily and to stay at home, wouldn't it be more meaningful if she could send the child away without his expectation? Without hesitation, Tang Menjing picked out a loose dress from the closet that showed off her belly and put on delicate makeup. The woman in the mirror was exquisite and mature. Her beauty was beyond comparison. Tang Menjing put on her bag with satisfaction and walked out. Seeing Tang Menjing so energetic, the two maids who were guarding the door looked at each other and immediately followed her. "You don't have to follow me. I will go out for a walk." Tang Menjing became impatient when she saw them. They were all mute and only Laurel could speak. How boring. Laurel, the maid supervisor, quickly came over and shouted, "Miss Tang, what are you doing?" "Do I need to tell you?" Tang Menjing said grumpily. "Mr. Li said that you should take a good rest. If you are not well during pregnancy, it will be hard for you to give birth." The last sentence was added by Laurel herself. However, Tang Menjing was overjoyed. "Okay, I see. But I have to go out for a while. I will be back soon." "No, Miss Tang, you can't go out." Perhaps they heard Moon Laurel's movements. The two bodyguards standing at the door became even colder. They stood at the door and blocked it. "What do you mean? I can't go out?" "Miss Tang, you can stay at home. This is what Sir wants." Tang Menjing was furious. "How dare you? Why can't I go out? It seems that I can't control you." Then she dialed Li Xiqing's number. However, although the cell phone signal bar was full, the call couldn't be made. Tang Menjing was shocked. She tried to open the data connection and switched to 3G/4G, but found that she could not even send WeChat messages. Tang Menjing's face changed. She immediately thought of the beautiful murals around the villa and the 2-meter-high wall. The bodyguards heard the commotion and surrounded them. The maids were respectful but not fearful at all. Laurel looked at her with a warning gaze. Tang Menjing's heart skipped a beat, and a crazy idea filled her mind. She was under house arrest. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Su Qianxi did not know how she got through the week. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling window on the 16th floor, she watched the cars and people coming and going. As time passed, she did not even know how long she had been standing. Her legs were numb, but she had no intention of sitting down. The phone rang and she was pulled back to reality. Glancing at the screen she saw it was Qin Shuhua. Chapter 329. She met Qin Shuhua at her favorite French restaurant. In her previous life, she had studied table etiquette in order to please Qin Shuhua. She had crammed the knowledge in this area so that she wouldn't be embarrassed when she invited Qin Shuhua to dinner. However, later she found out. It was not that she was not good enough, but Tang Menjing was too good. She could not compete with her. Qin Shuhua booked a VIP room. When she was taken in by the waiter, Su Qianxi immediately saw her elegant mother-in-law sitting inside. Seeing her come in, Qin Shuhua waved her hand and said, "You can serve the food." Mom. Su Qianxi sat down and let the waiter prepare the food for her. Qin Shuhua nodded and took a sip of water. She seemed to clear her throat and said, "These days you did not stay at home?" "Yes." "Why?" Su Qianxi pursed her lips and looked at Qin Shuhua. Qin Shuhua looked happier than usual. Faintly, Su Qianxi saw the calculation in Qin Shuhua's eyes. Her heart sank. Su Qianxi curled her lips and said, "Mom, you wanted to see me today. Did you need something?" The waiter had already served the food. The first dish was of French mussels. "I already know." Qin Shuhua looked at her with a faint smile. "You still want to hide it from me?" "What?" Su Qianxi did not understand. "The contract." Su Qianxi's pupils shrank. Hearing this word, she inexplicably panicked. "Contract? What contract?" Pretending to be calm, Su Qianxi looked at Qin Shuhua with some doubt in her eyes. "Contract?" The waiter quickly brought a Saint-Jacques scallop. The exquisite meal was like a beautiful work of art. Then there was fried fish, crispy onion soup. Su Qianxi suddenly chuckled with sarcasm. This was Tang Menjing's taste. Qin Shuhua seemed to also notice that Su Qianxi had noticed. She coughed and said, "I am a little hungry, so I ordered first. If you do not like these, you can order something else." "Okay." Qin Shuhua dismissed the waiter and said, "Let's eat first. We will talk after eating." However, there was a stone in her heart that Su Qianxi could not eat. Moreover, none of these were what she liked to eat. After taking a few bites, she couldn't eat anymore and went straight to the point. "Mom, why did you call me today? Are you full?" Qin Shuhua glanced at the almost untouched dishes in front of her. What a waste. What if... Su Qianxi was also angry and sneered, "Mom, all these are Tang Menjing's favorites. I don't like to eat this kind of food at all. If you don't want to waste it, shouldn't you ask her out?" Qin Shuhua did not expect Su Qianxi to talk back and looked at her in surprise. Su Qianxi glanced at the time on her phone and said, "Why don't we call her now and ask her to come here? Maybe she can catch up with the heat." "What do you mean?" "Mom, what do you mean?" Qin Shuhua was furious. She opened her purse, took out the contract she had hidden, and threw it at Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat, and her arrogance disappeared in an instant. Looking down at the 4 words, her mind went blank. Divorce contract? How did it fall into Qin Shuhua's hands? Chapter 330. How do you explain this? Qin Shuhua sounded a bit angry. Divorce contract? I didn't know you were so scheming and capable. I really don't know how Captain Li fell for you. For the title of Mrs. Li, you and your mother have set up such a big trap. Su Qianxi's heart raced. However, looking at the furious Qin Shuhua, he calmed down. He looked at her coldly and asked, "Where did you get this thing?" "Divorce contract. 1 year." Now it had been almost 7 months and there was less than half a year left. On it was her signature, Li Xiqing's signature, and the lawyer's seal. "You don't need to know where I got it." Qin Shuhua seemed a little agitated. She stood up and said, "You had such an agreement with my son from the very beginning. Then who is the father of the child you miscarried?" Su Qianxi seemed to have returned to her previous lifetime, when she was despised by everyone. Qin Shuhua's expression still did not change at all. However, Su Qianxi was no longer that Su Qianxi. With a cold face, Su Qianxi also stood up and said slowly, "Mom, I call you Mom because I really treat you as my mother." Qin Shuhua looked at Su Qianxi incredulously, not expecting her mother to talk to her like this. "But are you sure that what you are doing now is behaving like a mother? If my child is not Li Xiqing's, do you think your son will let me go? Do you think Mr. Li can tolerate me putting on such a big green hat for him?" Qin Shuhua paused. Indeed, no one knew Li Xiqing better than she did. Li Xiqing's personality was extremely domineering, and he could not tolerate even a grain of sand. "I know that you have never liked me and have never treated me as your daughter-in-law. I know that. But why are you trying so hard to bring Li Xiqing and Tang Menjing together?" Su Qianxi really could not figure it out. "Last time at the party, you clearly saw that the death of the child had something to do with Tang Menjing. If it were not for her, my child would be almost 7 months old now. Maybe before the new year the child would be born. In less than 2 years he might be able to call you grandma and call me mom. Qin Shuhua was a bit moved. Looking at Su Qianxi's hateful face, she was a bit dumbfounded. She thought that Su Qianxi had no temper. It turned out that the little woman who only knew to stand behind Li Xiqing or Li Sun could have such a powerful side. But mom. Su Qianxi looked pained. The child is dead, killed by Tang Menjing. You did not question her or scold her. Why are you doing this to me now? Mom, this is too unfair. Qin Shuhua looked at her and coldly laughed. I'll believe that the child is my son's, but what about yours? How do you explain that? Su Qianxi looked at the divorce contract in front of her, and a white light flashed in her mind. Things that she could not figure out before suddenly became clear. He chuckled softly, and an indescribably complicated expression flowed between his brows as he slowly said, Did he ask you to find me? Li Xiqing? Qin Shuhua looked at her in surprise. Su Qianxi's eyes became more and more wet. He wanted to divorce early so that Tang Menjing and his child could officially become part of the Li family, right? So, this secret that only belonged to them appeared in Qin Shuhua's hands, so that she could force her to divorce, right? Chapter 331. As long as she did not leave, Tang Menjing would be the mistress. She wanted Tang Menjing's child to be born as an illegitimate child. She wanted her to abdicate and let the mother and son take over? No way. Looking at Qin Shuhua's slightly shocked eyes, Su Qianxi picked up her bag and turned to leave. After paying the bill, Su Qianxi took a taxi and went home. Su Qianxi thought she would cry, but after getting in the car, she unexpectedly found that her heart was extremely empty. Her eyes were strangely dry. Leaning against the back seat, Su Qianxi only felt that her mood was depressed to the extreme, as if the next second she could be pulled into a bottomless abyss. Taking a deep breath, she opened the window and saw the bright and luxurious street view going back. The cold wind of October poured in, making Su Qianxi shiver. A place appeared in her mind. Su Qianxi looked away and said, Master, let's go to Kingstown Tower. Kingstown Tower was located in the center of Kingstown. It was surrounded by many famous office buildings and classic coordinates of Kingstown. After buying a ticket, Su Qianxi went directly to the top floor, walked to the transparent area on the edge and looked down. Her heart was beating like thunder. However, he soon emptied his mind and looked into the distance. Thousands of lights were bright, and the road was illuminated by warm yellow street lights. Cars were coming and going like running water. Looking down, it was the largest river in Kingstown. On the river, beautiful and luxurious ships were slowly moving, leaving countless beautiful and gorgeous sceneries. Spectacular. After so many years in Kingstown, it was the first time that Su Qianxi saw the city like this. She couldn't help but feel lost, and her thoughts went further and further. The phone in her bag vibrated. Su Qianxi looked down and was shocked by the scenery under her feet. Her first reaction was to take a step back, and then she remembered that she was standing on Kingstown Tower. Feeling the eyes around her, Su Qianxi felt a bit embarrassed. Blushing, she walked to a place with fewer people. Picking up the phone, she saw the call was from Louis-Han. Hi, Qian. Hi. Turn around and look back. Su Qianxi was dazed and subconsciously turned her head. Louis-Han held the phone and looked at her with a bright smile. Under the rimless glasses, a pair of peach blossom eyes were filled with tenderness. Why are you here? She exclaimed. Are you following me? Hearing this, Louis-Han took a step back and shouted, Go to hell. Who's following you? Shameless. I'm here to accompany a client. She looked behind him. Where are your clients? Yes, I said I had met a good friend and she said she was going. By yourself? Yes. Tisk tsk just in time. Accompany me to eat. I haven't eaten yet. You don't eat with your clients? They didn't eat either, but the couple went to get special treatment and ignored me. Sigh. Single dogs have no human rights. Louis-Han was so angry that he almost wanted to scratch the wall. She laughed and looked reluctant. Well, I haven't eaten yet anyway. Let's eat together. Louis-Han looked at her, his smile deepening, and nodded. Yes, let's go together. After dinner, it was after 9 p.m. Louis-Han was very good at chatting. In less than 3 hours, Su Qianxi's depressed mood that was about to go crazy was quickly relieved. Louis-Han started the car and offered to take her home. She did not refuse and directly told him Song Yifun's address. Chatting and laughing along the way, they soon arrived at their destination. Louis-Han parked the car at the gate of the community and walked Su Qianxi up. However, just as she reached the bottom of the stairs, a figure forcefully bumped into her eyes. Chapter 332. Li Xiqing stood in the light of dusk, wearing a dark gray trench coat. His tall figure cast a long shadow on Su Qianxi. Seeing Su Qianxi walking with Lu Yihan, Li Xiqing's cold and deep eyes became even colder, like a cold pond in winter, bottomless. Seeing him, Lu Yihan couldn't help but think of the last time he did not come. Although he was not happy, he was Qianshan's husband, so Lu Yihan could only swallow his unhappiness. Originally, he wanted to go upstairs to have some tea and see what kind of person Qianshan's father was. However, at this moment, seeing Li Xiqing's obviously unfriendly face, Lu Yihan knew that this was not a good place to stay. He laughed and said, "Qianshan, I'll go first." "Well, thank you for today, Yihan." "You're welcome." "But..." Lu Yihan walked down the stairs, shaking his car key and walking toward his red Renault. Li Xiqing did not say a word from the beginning to the end. He slowly took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, took one out and lit it with a lighter. Slowly he took a puff. As if she did not see him, Su Qianxi took out her card, swiped the access code and walked in. Li Xiqing followed her, but Su Qianxi walked extremely fast, as if she was avoiding something. After entering the elevator, she directly pressed the close button. A big hand blocked between them and Li Xiqing squeezed his body in. His cold face seemed to be tighter, and a pair of cold eyes stared at her like a cold eagle, sharp and deep. Su Qianxi did not look at him and pressed the 16th floor as if she did not see him. Li Xiqing took a step closer and Su Qianxi was scared and stepped back, hitting the wall of the elevator. With a big hand next to her, Li Xiqing held a cigarette between his long fingers. The smoke slowly rose and soon the entire elevator was filled with the smell of smoke. Li Xiqing narrowed his eyes, and Su Qianxi only felt a sense of danger. "Avoiding me?" Li Xiqing stared at her, his voice low. Su Qianxi's breathing suddenly quickened, but she still turned her head and did not look at him. Ding. When the elevator arrived, she was about to walk around him, but her hand was grabbed. He was so strong that Su Qianxi's arm was caught off guard and hurt. "Let me go." Su Qianxi's voice was a bit choked. When she said it, even she was shocked. Looking back, she saw a pair of eyes. She felt that she was about to be drowned, so deep, so deep. Struggling hard, she got rid of him and ran to the door of her house. However, the more anxious he was, the more he couldn't find the bunch of keys. Her heart was beating faster and faster. She clearly sensed that he was already behind her, but she had not found the key yet. The faint white smoke blew past her ear, carrying the smell of tobacco tickling her face. Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat. Inexplicably, she no longer had the strength to squat down. Her vision blurred. Gritting her teeth, Su Qianxi poured out everything in the small bag. Her cell phone, key card, cosmetics, wallet, and finally, a bunch of keys fell out with a jingle. Chapter 333. Picking up the things one by one, she put them back in her bag and stood up. Su Qianxi looked up at the man behind her who was almost leaning against her. The familiar smell, the strong male hormones, and the face that she knew so well. Li Xiqing stretched out his hand and pressed her against the wall. His deep and cold eyes were even more intense, as if he was going to suck her in. She looked up at him and felt a lump in her throat. "Guilty?" Li Xiqing's voice was deep and mellow like the sound of a cello. She bit her lower lip, turned her head and reached out to push him away. However, Li Xiqing did not move at all. He looked at her with a deeper gaze. Pressing her down, he did not let her escape and said slowly, "What are you afraid of? Tell me." Su Qianxi did not speak. Tears ran down her cheeks and wet her face. Li Xiqing's eyes softened a bit. Holding her hand, he took her key and said, "Go in. It's cold outside." "Don't go in." She sobbed but was firm. "If you have anything to say, say it here. I will go in and help you move your things. I will take you home." "This is my home, Mr. Li. You go back." "I will not go back with you." Li Xiqing narrowed his eyes and looked dangerous, but he still said patiently, "Don't be naughty. It is not good to disturb father-in-law Song. Dad went to London. Then I will stay here with you today." Su Qianxi resisted and pushed him, shaking her head hard. "No." Li Xiqing put an arm around her waist, looked at her and asked, "What's wrong with you? Are you afraid that I will scold you? Or that I will hurt Lu Yihan?" Shaking her head again and again, Su Qianxi was choked and could not speak. "I do not object to you making friends. Just keep your distance." Li Xiqing was already very close to her. "Lu Yihan is your good friend. I was too impulsive last time. I found out later and I am also very grateful to him. When there is a chance, can you take me to him to apologize and thank him in person?" although he still did not like to see them together. However, he was the one who saved Su Qianxi. Apologizing and thanking him was something he should do. Putting his face close to hers, Li Xiqing's eyes were full of tenderness. He whispered, "You know, I miss you so much." The faint smell of tobacco filled the tip of her nose. Hearing this, Su Qianxi's heart was even more painful, trembling and cramping. He said he missed her. He said he missed her. However, he had been on a business trip with Tang Menjing for a whole week. Now that he had returned from his business trip, he came to miss her? Tang Menjing's health was not good for him to travel, so he came to miss her? She couldn't help but burst into tears. Pushing him away, her hand reached out and landed on his face. Dazed, Li Xiqing looked at her. When she was about to slap him for the second time, Li Xiqing's eyes darkened. He grabbed her hand and growled, "Are you crazy?" Li Xiqing had never been treated like this before. Ever since he was young, his life had been smooth sailing. He had only been beaten by this woman when he was 26 years old, and she had even beaten him twice. Su Qianxi's body trembled and her back was against the wall. Looking at him, she burst into tears. Why did you do this to me?" Li Xiqing felt even more puzzled. Looking at her, he said angrily, "Su Qianxi." He was the one who was slapped and he had not cried yet. Why was she crying? However, he saw Su Qianxi's hand was going to take off her coat. She was only wearing a tank top. Taking it off, her white and delicate skin was exposed, which deeply stimulated Li Xiqing's vision. Then she lifted the tank top. Startled, Li Xiqing went up and pressed her hand down, growling, "Are you crazy? This is still the door." Chapter 334. Li Xiqing suddenly tightened his grip on her hand. Gazing at her with a pair of cold eyes, he said in a cold voice, "What do you mean?" Su Qianxi's hand was pried open, and her chin was pinched by him. Looking up, she saw his cold eyes. It was as if a violent storm was about to engulf her. Su Qianxi's heart trembled. Looking at him, she reached out and continued to lift her shirt. He pulled her hand up and pressed her down. Gritting his teeth, he looked at her and almost roared, "What do you mean by this?" Did she think that he came here just to have sex with her? Su Qianxi's back was pressed against the cold wall, her body shivering. In the face of the storm that almost tore her apart, she forced a sneer and endured the heartache. With a look of disdain, she said word by word, "What are you pretending for? The people outside can't satisfy you, so you came to me, didn't you?" The people outside? Li Xiqing's heart felt like it had been bitten by a mad dog, and a piece of it was gone in an instant. Dripping with blood, it was riddled with holes. The hand pinching her chin tightened, and his fist hit the wall behind her ear. Bang! With a muffled sound, Su Qianxi was scared. Her legs became weak and she almost fell. However, the breath hanging in her heart did not allow her to fall. Biting her lower lip, she looked at him stubbornly, her body shivering slightly. Li Xiqing looked at her, sneered, and bent down to pick up the coat that Su Qianxi had just thrown away. Su Qianxi's eyelashes trembled, and her tears fell on his head, sinking into his hair. Li Xiqing paused and quickly picked up the coat. Seeing her trembling in fear, as if she was a hedgehog facing a formidable enemy, his heart skipped a beat. Throwing the coat at her face, Li Xiqing said in a low voice with suppressed anger, "I really want to strangle you." His voice was so vicious that Su Qianxi was scared and shrank back. Seeing this, Li Xiqing suddenly chuckled. "I must be crazy to let you do this to me." His deep and mellow voice echoed in the corridor. The sound of leather shoes faded away, and Su Qianxi could only see darkness. It was only when he heard the elevator ring that he pulled his jacket off his face. He stared at the empty corridor in a daze. After a long while, she picked up the key and walked in. She threw herself on the bed and stared at the ceiling, her mind blank. "My head hurts so much." Not knowing how long she had been lying there, she took her phone out of her bag, found Li Xiqing's number and sent several text messages. "Mr. Li, I know everything about your business trip. Mr. Li, your mother looked for me today. She used our contract to force me to divorce you. I refused and told her a lot. I never knew I could be so eloquent. Mr. Li, I will not divorce you. There are still more than 5 months left in the divorce contract. I will release you after your sentence is completed. Li Xiqing, I love you." She felt like she had seen a ghost. What? Li Xiqing, who was usually calm and composed, was seriously injured and went to the bar. Not only did he drink, but he also fought. Chapter 335. She wanted to cry but had no tears. She called the boss's wife to come over, but she was stopped by her boss. "If you dare to call her, You don't have to follow me anymore. So, the lady boss still didn't know that he was injured? Did she really think that he had come back from a business trip? Qingyu was full of grief and indignation. Just when she decided to stay here to get some overtime pay, he kicked her out. Before leaving, he asked, "Where is my cell phone?" "It's broken. The front and back screens are seriously broken. It has been sent for repair," she said. "I got you a new one. Here you go." He glanced at it, pinched his eyebrows and said, "Okay, you can go back now." When Qingyu was about to leave, she was stopped again. "Wait. Is there anything else? Did she call?" Qingyu was dazed for a second before she realized who it was. She shook her head and said, "No. The previous one was broken and turned off. I haven't received any calls from Mrs. Li. She did receive a few calls from clients." The light in Li Xiqing's eyes dimmed a bit. Then, with a wave of his hand, he lay back down. It was hard to tell what he was thinking. No one had come back to the house for half a month, and Nanny Rong was a bit panicked. She made a phone call to the old house. Nanny Rong more or less wanted to complain. When she heard Captain Li's raised voice, Nanny Rong knew that the people in the old house did not know about the couple's quarrel. Laughing awkwardly, Nanny Rong said, "Maybe they are living outside. After all, Sir doesn't only have one house." "Nonsense. That boy would not do something like that. Something must have happened." Old Master Li roared angrily, "This is ridiculous. I was wondering why Chan has been acting weird on the phone recently. This is great. That guy must have bullied her." Nanny Rong was speechless. In her eyes, Su Qinxi was his granddaughter, and Li Xiqing was the one who came to visit. "I understand. Don't worry about it. Leave it to me." "Okay." As soon as Nanny Rong said that, Grandpa Sheng hung up. The phone in the old house was from the 1920s and 1930s. Putting his finger in the hole, he dialed Li Xiqing's number. Captain Li was ready to scold Li Xiqing at any time. However, no one picked up. Then he dialed 2 more and the results were the same. After about half an hour, Li Xiqing called back. The old man wanted to curse even more. He opened his mouth and shouted, "You're going to die. You don't even answer your grandfather's phone. You're rebelling." After a second of silence, Li Xiqing said quietly, "Grandpa, I was in a meeting." Meeting? You only know how to attend meetings. Every time I call you, it's because you're in a meeting. What's the use of earning so much money? If you have the heart, why don't you go and please your wife? Otherwise, when your wife runs away, you'll be crying." Li Xiqing did not say anything and looked at the calendar on the table. It had been 7 days since they last met. "Dead. Say something." Old Master Li was furious. "Yes, not dead. What's the matter, Grandpa?" Captain Li suddenly felt angry and roared, "You're rebelling. I just said so much and you didn't hear a word?" "Yes." Chapter 336. When Li Xiqing heard the roar, he frowned and said softly, "She will not go back with me." "Well, I don't care. If I don't see you two come back today, I will definitely have a heart attack and then I will be pissed to death by you." "Grandpa, since you know I am your grandpa, behave yourself. It must be your fault again. Our Chan is such a good girl. Say, why are you angry with her every day? Everything is fine. Why can't a husband and wife talk things out? Why do you have to do these things all day? Are you trying to piss me off?" "Grandpa, shut up. I don't want to listen. I will give you an hour to bring your wife back for dinner. If I don't see you later, then I won't eat. I will starve to death." Lu Sa, who was listening on the side, couldn't help laughing secretly. Captain Li was so old. How could he still be so childish? How could he play the game of hunger strike? However, Li Xiqing couldn't stand it the most. With a sigh, Li Xiqing said, "Got it. You won't starve to death." "Well, that's more like it." Captain Li hung up the phone with satisfaction and sat back on the sofa with his cane. However, the more he thought about it, the more uncomfortable he felt. Suddenly he said, "Oh no, how long did Xiao Rong say they haven't been home?" Lu Sa thought for a moment and said, "More than half a month." Li Xiqing hung up the phone and let out a long sigh. After telling Qingyu to do the next thing, the rest became irrelevant. However, Li Xiqing was still slowly reading the documents in his seat. Qingyu went out and came back. Seeing that Li Xiqing was still there, she was a little surprised and asked, "Boss, aren't you going back to the old house?" "Well," Li Xiqing responded, looked up and said, "Ask Yang to call and ask when her class is over." "Okay. Don't say I asked." Qingyu was speechless. Come on, Qingyu was very busy. Why couldn't she let others do this kind of small thing? But he was the boss, so Qingyu could not refuse. 2 minutes later she quickly replied, There is one elective class left. Get ready for class. Okay, Li Xiqing responded and leaned back in his chair. Then should we let little Yang pick them up? Yes. She replied to Yang on WeChat, but as soon as the message was sent, he changed his mind. Forget it. I'll go by myself. Qingyu, don't tell her. She left the office and he finished approving all the documents. It only took him 10 minutes at the slowest speed. Helpless, he opened the drawer, intending to place the documents inside. However, the moment he pulled the drawer open, he saw a black phone. The phone had been fixed for a long time, but it was broken, and he had no intention of using it again. He stuffed the documents into the folder, locked it, got up and left the office. Su Chenxi walked out of the school with her bag in her arms and immediately saw the cool black Maybach. She stopped and seemed to have guessed who was in the car. When Yang and Li Xiqing were in China at the same time, Yang would not drive this car. Chapter 337. As she approached, the window of the Maybach was rolled down. Li Xiqing's cold and determined face was revealed. The familiar curve, the familiar profile, the familiar edge. Su Chenxi's eyes were involuntarily attracted to him. Li Xiqing turned his head. His eyes were cold and deep, but when looked closely they were unfathomable. Deliberately looking away, Su Chenxi held her backpack and was about to walk around him. The car started moving and blocked her way in an instant. Get in the car. It was an order that could not be denied. His voice was deep and familiar. Su Chenxi's heart skipped a beat. Looking at her, he said slowly, "Grandpa wants you to go back to the old house." "Grandpa?" Su Chenxi pursed her lips, opened the door of the passenger seat and sat in. "Let's go." Li Xiqing looked at her with a deeper gaze. Su Chenxi clearly felt his gaze, so deep and intense. Feeling a bit nervous, she still pretended to be calm, but her hand holding her backpack tightened. Suddenly Li Xiqing moved. He leaned over and the distance between the two was shortened. Su Chenxi was startled and shrank back. Turning her head, she saw a pair of cold eyes. Subconsciously, she held her breath and looked at him. Li Xiqing looked down and glanced at her, finding that she was slightly trembling, looking at him as if she was facing a formidable enemy. In an instant, Li Xiqing clearly felt that his heart, which he thought had become numb from all the work, was being whipped again, burning with pain. Was it that scary? He could not understand what kind of existence he was in her eyes. Su Chenxi clearly noticed that his eyes were slightly dim. Her heart fluttered, and there was a flash of surprise in her eyes. However, before she could figure it out, he had already walked away. At the same time, holding the seat belt in his hand, he pressed the button on the lower left corner. He silently started the car and drove steadily in the direction of the old house. No one spoke on the way. No one spoke first, and the atmosphere was so quiet that it was awkward. When they arrived at the old house, it was almost 6 p.m. It was dinner time. Lu Sa put the dishes on the table. Seeing Li Xiqing coming in, she was a bit surprised and said, "Captain, the young master is back." Captain Li came out with a cane. When he saw Li Xiqing, he was about to lose his temper. However, when he saw Su Chenxi behind him, he immediately calmed down. He snorted and walked towards them. Su Chenxi hurried to hold Grandpa and called, "Grandpa, are you looking for me?" "Humph, I'm not looking for you, I'm looking for you." The old man was very unhappy. "Let's eat first." "Yes." Qin Shuhua walked out from inside. When she saw the two of them, there was a meaningful look on her face. It was rare for Li Xiao to be at home. Seeing his second son and daughter-in-law come back, he was in a good mood. He pushed his wife and said, "Let's eat." The family sat at the table and Captain Li naturally sat at the head of the table. He took the bowl handed over by Lu Sa, looked at Li Xiqing and said, "Where did you say you were going to hold the wedding last time?" Wedding, what a distant word. When Su Chenxi heard this, she paused eating and looked at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing looked indifferent, glanced at Su Chenxi and said slowly, "I forgot." Chapter 338. Su Chenxi's heart felt like it had been stabbed. Holding the chopsticks, she slightly tightened her hand, lowered her head and picked up the bowl of rice. Grandpa heard Li Xiqing's answer and was furious. He directly threw the chopsticks on the table and said, "What do you mean forget? Are you so busy with work?" Li Xiqing did not speak, holding the chopsticks to pick up the food, eating slowly, his movements elegant and dignified. Grandpa was furious. Looking at Su Chenxi, he said, "Qian, has he been so weird these days?" Sarcastic. Li Xiqing paused. Su Chenxi put down the bowl and said, "No. Of course not." Grandpa had already seen through everything. He is busy with work, so it is normal for him to forget, Su Chenxi explained in a low voice. Reaching out her hand, she picked some food for herself and ate slowly as if she did not care. Li Xiqing did the same, eating slowly and looking as calm as usual. Grandpa could only watch anxiously. He glared angrily and stood up. "Grandpa, eat," Li Xiqing called, but his voice was calm and did not sound sincere. Su Chenxi put down the bowl and quickly greeted him, saying, "Grandpa, eat first. We can talk about this later, okay?" Grandpa heard it and glanced at Li Xiqing. Seeing that Li Xiqing did not mean to refuse, he snorted and turned around to sit down. He knew his grandson too well. As long as he did not refuse on the spot, there was still room for improvement. It seemed that this matter was not entirely Li Xiqing's fault. Grandpa picked up the chopsticks, ate a few mouthfuls and soon said he was full. Su Chenxi helped Grandpa take a walk in the back garden. When they came back, it was already 10 minutes later. Li Xiqing was sitting on the sofa on the phone, listening to the content. It was business. Grandpa sat quietly on the side, and Su Chenxi was peeling an apple for him. However, when Grandpa finished the apple, Li Xiqing was still on the phone. Grandpa stared and threw the apple core over, looking like a warning. Li Xiqing did not dodge but caught the apple core firmly and threw it into the trash can. He took a wet tissue and wiped his hands, but his tone did not change. After a minute or two, the phone was hung up. "Tonight, Chan, stay here with Grandpa." Grandpa sighed. Although he was talking to Su Chenxi, he was glancing at Li Xiqing. "I don't have many days left. I can die in peace if I can spend more time with my grandson." "Grandpa." Su Chenxi felt sad. "You will live for a long time. If you continue like this, even if I can live for 100 years, I will be a few decades younger." She was speechless and looked at him. Li Xiqing met her eyes for less than a second before he looked away and said casually, "Then stay. I have something to do at the company. If there's nothing else, I'll be on my way." Captain Li was so angry that he picked up an apple in front of him and threw it at Li Xiqing, roaring, "You stay too." Li Xiqing dodged and said confidently, "I'm busy at the company." Chapter 339. This time, Li Xiqing caught the apple firmly and put it back without saying anything. Su Chenxi sat on the side and did not say a word. Qin Shuhua and Li Xiao went to the neighbor's house and saw this scene. Li Xiao's face darkened and he said, "Xiqing, don't make your grandfather mad." Li Xiqing curled his lips and glanced at Su Chenxi, saying, "No one wants to see me. Why should I stay here?" As soon as he said that, the people present were not fools. They knew what was going on the moment they heard it. All of a sudden, Su Chenxi attracted everyone's attention. Condemnation, contempt, love and ambiguity surrounded her. She felt her scalp tingling and said, "I did not." Captain Li stared at her, picked up another apple and threw it at her, yelling, "What else do you have to say?" Li Xiqing was hit in the stomach by the apple and was speechless. Picking up the apple and putting it back on the coffee table, Li Xiqing stood up and said, "I'm going to take a shower." Seeing this, Qin Shuhua looked at Su Chenxi with a faint smile. Su Chenxi looked back at her, fearlessly staring into her eyes. "You're quite something to be able to push my son like this." Qin Shuhua said something ambiguous and walked away. "Li Xiao, I have something to tell you." "Okay." Li Xiao nodded and looked at Su Chenxi thoughtfully. He said, "Don't let the elders worry about you. You are not young anymore. Don't worry too much. Xiqing is good to you." Li Xiao did not have much feelings for Su Chenxi. Although she was beautiful, she was a typical girl from a humble family. At the beginning, because she was personally chosen by Captain Li, he did not say anything. He did not expect that now his son was in a tight spot. Although Li Xiqing did not say it, he cared a lot about his wife. At least, he had never seen Li Xiqing treat anyone like this since he was a child. The people of the Li clan were all stubborn. Su Chenxi looked down, nodded and said, "I know, Dad." Without another word, Li Xiao followed Qin Shuhua into the study. "Don't listen to your father. If that kid bullies you, tell me. I'll back you up." Captain Li was not convinced. He patted his chest and said, "I'll always be your safe haven." She felt a lump in her throat, and her eyes were soon wet. Nodding, she sniffed and whispered, "Grandpa, why are you so nice to me? If I don't treat you well, should I treat Li Xiqing well? That guy is an ingrate humph. I'm still counting on you to give me a chubby great-grandson." In addition, with Li Xiqing's temper, if he could marry a wife, he should be very grateful. Which ordinary person could stand him? It just so happened that he had met someone he liked and that kid also liked. Of course, he had to make her stay and spread the seeds for the Li family. However, he did not say it out loud. Seeing Su Chenxi's touched look, he was very proud. Fortunately, His granddaughter-in-law was this little girl, who was easy to coax and satisfy. If it was that girl from the Tang family, thinking of Tang Menjing, Captain Li couldn't help feeling depressed. The smile on his face faded, but he quickly changed the topic with Su Qianxi. After chatting for a while, Captain Li felt tired and let her go back to her room. Su Qianxi stood at the door of the room. Thinking that she would be alone with him, she felt embarrassed. She did not know how to face him. Chapter 340. As soon as she entered the room, she smelled the faint smell of tobacco in the room. Walking in, a cold wind blew, and Su Qianxi shivered subconsciously. The window was wide open and the white curtain was fluttering in the wind. It was already dark outside. The moon was bright and the trees were swaying in the wind. Li Xiqing stood by the window wearing the same straight suit. His elbow was leaning against the window, a cigarette between his long fingers. The smoke was blown in by the wind. The ash was already very long, shaking on the edge of the vent. Noticing that someone had come in, Li Xiqing did not intend to turn around. Slowly shaking the ash into the ashtray, his voice was low and calm. In the wind he said, "Do you hate me a lot?" The unexpected question fell into Su Qianxi's ears, making her heart skip a beat. Like a planet hit by a meteorite, there was a violent impact in an instant. "Do you hate me a lot?" It was just a few words, but it had evoked all the grievances and sorrows in her heart. Looking at his back, Su Qianxi's eyes gradually dimmed, and a layer of mist came over her without warning. "How could it be? How could I hate you? You are Li Xiqing." However, she quickly wiped the water off and pretended not to hear it, turning around and rummaging through the closet. Although they had not been back for a while in the closet, Lu Sa had already changed into autumn clothes for them, so that they could come back at any time. After rummaging through a set of pajamas, Su Qianxi went into the bathroom and could not help but burst into tears. She was not a person who liked to cry. Even when she was beaten up by those rich women last time, she gritted her teeth and did not have the urge to cry at all. However, every time she saw Li Xiqing, her tears seemed to be opened and could not be held back. The influence he had over her was too great, too great. No matter in her previous lifetime or this lifetime, she could not feel anything for him. Every time she saw him, she would feel her heart pounding. How could she hate Li Xiqing like this? Li Xiqing clearly heard her footsteps moving away. He put out the cigarette, closed the window and sat on the sofa next to the bed. After a long silence, there was a knock on the door. It was Lu Sa who opened the door. "Second young master, this is the tonic that old master told second young mistress to drink. Please give it to second young mistress later." Li Xiqing glanced at it and frowned. "It's not good to have dessert at night." "Oh, you're not the one drinking it. You can give it to second young mistress. This is specially prepared by the old master for her." "Okay." Li Xiqing took it. "Got it. You can have some too. It tastes good." Lu Sa smiled slyly and glanced inside. "She's taking a shower. Just give it to me." "Oh, okay." Lu Sa gave the tray to Li Xiqing, closed the door and left. However, after Lu Sa went out, the expression on her face gradually became worried. She walked into the living room and saw the old man. She said, "Will it backfire? What if second young master misunderstands something?" Chapter 341. Coming out of the shower, Su Qianxi tried to calm herself down. Seeing him smoking on the sofa next to the bed, she just glanced at him, dried her hair and sat down on the bed. "Grandpa asked Lu Sa to make you a tonic. Drink it while it's hot," Li Xiqing said, stood up and walked into the bathroom. Su Qianxi glanced at the small bowl on the table. It was bird's nest with red dates and rock sugar. She felt it with her hand and found it was just right. She tasted it. It was sweet, smooth and delicious. She finished it in a few gulps, put the bowl back and began to blow-dry her hair. Perhaps because the hairdryer was on, Su Qianxi felt a bit hot. Putting on her cotton shoes, she took the small bowl outside and opened the fridge to pour a glass of milk. After finishing it, she went back to the room. However, after returning to the room, Su Qianxi felt even hotter and a bit uncomfortable. Opening the window, the cold wind blew in, making Su Qianxi feel refreshed. Standing by the window for a while, Su Qianxi felt more and more confused. Leaning against the window, she felt a bit dizzy. The sound of water in the bathroom stopped, and the door quickly opened. Su Qianxi did not look back, but she seemed to see his body in front of her. Sexy, wheat-colored skin, well-defined muscle lines, and that pure white bath towel that was filled with explosive power. So shameful. Su Qianxi covered her face and found that it was shockingly hot. So hot. Su Chenxi tugged at her nightgown and said to herself, "This dress is too thick." Li Xiqing seemed to have heard her words. He glanced at her and did not care. Taking a dry towel, he dried his hair. The wind was a bit strong and the curtain was lifted. Feeling a bit cold, Li Xiqing threw the towel down and said, "Close the window." But Su Chenxi did not seem to hear it, standing still. Li Xiqing frowned, walked up slowly, pushed her away and closed the window without looking at her. Seeing that he only had a bath towel on, Su Chenxi felt even more thirsty. Stepping back, she plunged into the bed and quickly covered her face with the quilt. Why? As soon as she saw him, she had an urge to ravage him. What the hell? Obviously, she wasn't that thirsty. She snuggled in the quilt, feeling even more uncomfortable. His skin was shockingly hot, and waves of heat assaulted him, but there wasn't a single drop of sweat on his body. It was as if he was suffering from a fever. She unconsciously moaned and wriggled. Lifting the quilt, she felt very comfortable with the cool air on her skin. So hot, so hot. She quietly put one leg under the bed and lifted her skirt a little. Feeling the cold air on her leg, she finally felt better. However, she caught a glimpse of Li Xiqing's strange look. She shrank her head like an ostrich and covered her face with the quilt, not letting him see. Seeing her like this, Li Xiqing simply ignored her and pulled the towel away. He slowly took out a silk robe and put it on. However, seeing that body, she subconsciously clamped her legs and shamefully thought of how he looked when he entered her. Chapter 342. Startled, Li Xiqing's first reaction was to run over and pick her up, only to find that her body was shockingly hot. Covering her face, she did not even dare to raise her head. It was too embarrassing. She had fallen to the ground while lying down. She felt that she was in the terminal stage of embarrassment and could not be saved. However, when she touched his bare chest, she felt a cold sensation surrounding her. She couldn't help but curl up into a ball as she greedily shrunk into his embrace. It was a completely subconscious movement. When she realized what she had done, she was completely in his arms. Subconsciously, she wanted to leave, but Li Xiqing's hand grabbed her and touched her forehead with his slightly rough hand. Hot. Shockingly hot. Li Xiqing frowned and said in a slightly reproachful tone, "You have a fever and you still open the window." Then he picked her up and put her on the bed. She only felt more dizzy. Grabbing his robe, she tore off a corner of it. Suddenly, she saw a long wound at the junction of his arm and the side of his back. The wound had scabbed off, but it had not completely fallen off. Part of the pink skin was exposed, which was particularly eye-catching under his wheat-colored skin. "You're hurt?" she exclaimed and reached out to touch it. Li Xiqing grabbed her hand and pulled up the robe with the other hand. Su Chenxi's eyes couldn't help looking down. He pulled up his sleeping robe, but his chest was loose. His smooth and muscular chest was clearly defined and his outline was clear. She felt her mouth was dry and even hotter. Blushing, she looked away and fanned herself, saying, "It's so hot, hot." Li Xiqing frowned even more. "It's so hot and it's still hot?" She did not speak, only feeling that she was blacking out. Subconsciously clamping her legs together, her white and plump thighs rubbing against each other under her dress. As she moved, she couldn't help looking at him. Desire. From her eyes, Li Xiqing saw the word that she did not hide. What the hell? Li Xiqing turned his body to avoid her eyes, but she quickly looked at him with a bit of pitiful eyes. His cold and deep eyes glanced down at her face. Her cheeks were flushed and she was drunk. Her watery black eyes were filled with lust. She bit her lower lip and her eyes were blurry but filled with desire. As his thighs rubbed against each other, a soft sound could be heard. His hands gripped the sheets tightly. This, Li Xiqing suddenly understood. He thought that she was having a fever, but now it seemed that she was going to lose one of her syllables. But how could it be? A white light flashed in his mind, and Li Xiqing suddenly realized that there was something wrong with that bowl of bird's nest. But Lu Sa said it was sent by Grandpa. Could it be? Li Xiqing was speechless and thought to himself, how disrespectful. Seeing that he was not moving, she got up and grabbed the corner of his robe. However, she seemed to realize that she should not do that, so she immediately let go of his robe. Burrowing into the sheets, she covered her head and curled up into a ball. Knowing that she was not having a fever, Li Xiqing was not in a hurry. Slowly turning off the light, he opened his robe and lay down next to her, motionless. Chapter 343. Su Chenxi felt even more uncomfortable. He was under the blanket so close, why did he have to run so far away? Closer, closer. Feeling wronged, Su Chenxi suddenly threw off the blanket and let the cold air hit her. However, in less than 2 minutes she was so sad that she wanted to cry. Sobbing, she said, "It's so hot." Li Xiqing glanced at her and said quietly, "If it's hot, take it off." Take it off. She also wanted to take it off, but was it really okay to take it off next to him, in front of him? Would he think that she was trying to seduce him? However, it was really uncomfortable. "I'm sleeping. I won't look at you," he said, turning his back to her. She struggled for a moment, got up and took off her dress. After that, he could not stay calm anymore. Resisting the desire to turn around and take a look, all he could think about was her body. She was definitely not wearing it. Su Chenxi had taken off her dress, but it was still so hot, so hot. Her mouth was dry and her body wriggled restlessly. Burrowing into the quilt, she trembled with the quilt covering her body. Li Xiqing pretended to turn around unintentionally, and his hand fell on her with a snap. She shivered and couldn't help moaning. Li Xiqing's heart skipped a beat, but he quickly took his hand back. Gritting her teeth, she tried to hold it in for a few minutes. Finally, she couldn't help it and whispered, "Mr. Li, yes? I feel so bad. Yes, the fever is bad, but it will be fine if you can bear it." She stopped talking, curled up and sobbed in a low voice. Li Xiqing was going crazy and almost roared, "Why are you crying? Beg me, beg me. Beg me and I will give it to you." However, she did not say anything. Even though his body was reacting, he did not want to move closer. However, in less than a minute, Su Chenxi's hot hand reached over. He caught her hand and asked in a low voice, "What?" Feeling relieved, she took her hand back and turned her back to him. Li Xiqing cursed inwardly. In the end, he couldn't help but reach out and touch her back. He asked seriously, "Where do you feel uncomfortable?" Su Chenxi shivered slightly and involuntarily leaned closer, not speaking. She really wasn't wearing anything. Suddenly feeling blood rushing to the top of his head, Li Xiqing endured the pain. He moved his hand and put it on her waist. "Here." She moaned, but soon gritted her teeth and did not say anything. Pretending not to hear her, Li Xiqing slid his hand down to her belly. "We're here." She couldn't stand it anymore and yelled, "Don't touch me." It was rare for Li Xiqing to be so obedient. He took his hand back and said, "Okay, then I'm going to sleep." Then she heard him turning over. Su Chenxi really wanted to slap herself. Feeling her body tremble because of him, it was so comfortable. She was even more dizzy and her consciousness was blurred. Her hands wrapped around his back and touched his chest. Li Xiqing's lower body was aching. Feeling her initiative, he did not move. Su Chenxi's movements became bolder and her hand reached down. Chapter 344. Su Chenxi did not get what she wanted. Feeling extremely weak, she whimpered, "I didn't." "Then what did you want to do?" Su Chenxi did not say anything and lowered her head guiltily. However, she reached out and put her leg on his. Taking her hand back, she climbed onto his back, put her arms around him and put her lips on his. He tilted his head up and she kissed nothing. Her fragrant lips fell on his Adam's apple. He felt even more restless. However, his eyes were as calm as if nothing had happened. Looking at her, he asked, "Don't you hate me? Why did you kiss me?" Su Chenxi felt a stab in her heart. Shaking her head, she mumbled, "No, I didn't." "Didn't what?" "I didn't hate you." "Then why did you hit me?" Why did she hit him? Su Chenxi pursed her lips and burst into tears. Li Xiqing's heart ached. Leaning closer as if he was coaxing a little girl, he asked slowly, "Why?" "You're cheating on me." "You're a jerk." "When did I cheat?" Li Xiqing felt wronged. "You've always been the only one I've had." Su Chenxi's mind was a mess and she could not hear him at all. Twisting uncomfortably, she begged, so uncomfortable, Mr. Li." Li Xiqing also knew that she was upset. He reluctantly gave her a kiss and said sullenly, "Mrs. Li, please behave yourself." Su Chenxi did not listen to him. Wrapping her arms around him, she pressed her upper body against his. Her lips fell on his, mimicking what he had done to her, biting his lips awkwardly. Li Xiqing did not move, looking like he was at her mercy. However, Su Chenxi only kissed him and did not do anything else. Feeling anxious, he pushed her gently and asked, "Do you know how to do it or not?" Su Chenxi felt even more uncomfortable, looking at him with her wet eyes. Li Xiqing sighed, "I'm scared of you." Then he immediately took the initiative and pressed her down. Seizing her lips, Li Xiqing went straight in, his movements hot and wild. Holding her back with his big hand, she couldn't help letting out a moan as his rough hand stroked her white and tender skin. "Little slut." he said in a low voice, pushing his thighs apart as he lowered his waist and rubbed against her. Su Qianxi's body trembled, and she made an uncontrollable sound. However, the next second she began to cry. Grabbing his back, she cried, "It's so uncomfortable. Go in, Mr. Li. Beg me. Please, I beg you." Begging me? Where's your sincerity? She wanted to kill him. Grabbing him, she asked, "What kind of sincerity do you want? I'll help you today, but you have to promise me one thing." Su Qianxi lifted her waist and put her legs on him, asking impatiently, "What?" "I'll tell you when I think of something." Li Xiqing moved forward, and Su Qianxi immediately moaned in satisfaction. However, he did not move. She felt even more uncomfortable and urged, "Hurry up. Promise me first." Chapter 345. The unexpected attack made all of Su Qianxi's words vanish in her mouth. He took her lips in his, feeling her scorching heat as she swayed with him. After the first time, Su Qianxi felt much better. After her body returned to normal, she felt a little sleepy. She was so tired that she did not even want to move a finger. Su Qianxi's eyelids drooped, somewhat resisting his touch. However, Li Xiqing said quietly, "You're going to throw me away? It's not that easy." As a result, Su Qianxi felt like her whole body was about to fall apart. Every time she resisted, it could only end in vain. She did not know how long the king-sized bed had been swaying. When it completely stopped, the sky outside the window had already begun to brighten. When she woke up the next day, it was already dawn. Opening her eyes, she saw the enlarged chest in front of her. The wheat-colored skin was delicate and smooth. Su Qianxi reached out her finger and pressed it. She clearly felt that the body in front of her was a little tense, and then a big hand reached over and grabbed her hand. Su Qianxi blinked and looked up at him. With a single glance, he saw a pair of deep, cold eyes. Vaguely, there was a sense of danger in them. Su Qianxi's hair stood on end and she subconsciously shrank back, only to find that her feet were pressed down and a little numb. Li Xiqing moved his legs slightly, and Su Qianxi took the opportunity to pull away. She rolled back. However, before she could escape, a big hand gently grabbed her and pulled her back again. Su Qianxi's heart raced and she nervously shrank her head and said, I'm going to wash up." Li Xiqing pursed his red lips into a line and looked down at her. After a long while he sighed. "Ah." Seeing this, Su Qianxi shrank her head even more, covered her body with the quilt and blinked. Li Xiqing rarely sighed. In her eyes, he was almost indomitable and omnipotent. Could it be that he also encountered something that he could not solve? She saw Li Xiqing glanced at her with a look of disappointment on his face. He faintly said, "I can't believe it was you. What a loss." Hearing that, Su Qianxi blushed and retorted, "It was you?" He was clearly the one who had been pestering her to. How did it become him who had suffered a great loss? She was the one who was at a disadvantage. However, before he finished, he was interrupted by Li Xiqing, who asked, "What about me? You were the one who seduced me last night." She blushed and frowned. She kicked him and yelled, "You're such a pervert." Li Xiqing's face turned red. Li Xiqing was kicked, but his expression did not change. He said seriously, "Did you forget that you were the one who pestered me last night, Mrs. Li?" Hearing that, Su Qianxi paused and stared at him with a blush. "You begged me, so I reluctantly helped you." Feeling embarrassed, she kicked him again. "Shut up." Li Xiqing's big hand under the quilt grabbed her ankle and slowly said, "In order to show your sincerity, you also promised me a condition. Do you still remember?" "I don't remember." Su Qianxi was angry. "I forgot." Chapter 346. Su Qianxi paused and retorted, "I was not wearing pants in the first place." "Oh." He nodded. "That's true. You could have just taken off your dress." Su Qianxi was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. Angrily, she turned around and went to pick up her nightdress. However, Li Xiqing pulled her back and whispered in her ear, "Have you really forgotten what happened last night?" Of course she remembered. It was still fresh in her memory. But how was she supposed to say it? How was she supposed to admit it? Blushing, she struggled and yelled, "Move! Don't hug me." "This is called hugging," he said, leaning closer to her until he was half on top of her, his big hands moving from top to bottom. "This is called hugging," he whispered. As he spoke, his large hand moved to touch her chest. He grasped it with one hand and gave it a gentle pinch. Su Qianxi struggled and was a bit annoyed. "Are you done? If I say I'm not done, can I continue?" Li Xiqing moved closer and kissed her lips from behind. Su Qianxi looked away, and Li Xiqing's kiss fell behind her ear. So he decided to suck on her earlobe. Su Qianxi's body shivered, and her whole body became soft. Li Xiqing moved with his wet lips, lifted his legs and whispered in her ear, "Look, you're craving me. Go away." Su Qianxi was furious. "Mr. Li, I never realized you were so shameless." "Mrs. Li, it's not too late to realize it now." "Mr. Li, Mrs. Li." Because of Li Xiqing's interference, it had become the most intimate form of address. The words "Mrs. Li" coming from his mouth made her heart beat faster than the word "wife." However, this man was not destined to belong to her. Su Qianxi's heart ached. She looked away and said in a hoarse voice, "Are you this shameless in Tang Menjing's bed?" "Tang Menjing's bed?" Li Xiqing chewed on the words carefully. Each word was simple, but when put together, why did it sound so harsh? With tears in her eyes, she elbowed him and struggled to get out of bed. However, Li Xiqing held her firmly and moved closer to her. In a dangerous voice, he asked, "Do you think I have something to do with Tang Menjing?" Hearing that, Su Qianxi felt it was ironic and turned her head. Li Xiqing clearly saw that the pair of dark eyes were full of sarcasm, disdain, and strange contempt. Narrowing his eyes dangerously, Li Xiqing was a bit displeased. Tightening his arms around her, he turned her over and pressed her flat on top of him. "What do you mean by this?" "You know what I mean, don't you, Mr. Li?" Su Qianxi's heart raced. The scratches and hickeys on his chest clearly showed her craziness last night. However, it was only last night. Looking away, Su Qianxi did not want to look at him. With her eyes red, she struggled again and pretended to be indifferent. "Get off me. Explain it to me. Do you still think Tang Menjing's baby is mine?" Chapter 347. Li Xiqing's eyes became colder. Narrowing his eyes, he looked dangerous as he asked slowly, "So, you slapped me for no reason that day because of this?" Su Qianxi looked away and did not speak. However, her breathing was a bit fast. Her eyes were slightly red, and there was a layer of moisture in her dark eyes. "Mrs. Li, you are doubting my character." His voice was a bit low and his anger was obvious. Su Qianxi curled her lips coldly but did not look at him. "I thought I made it very clear last time. I have nothing to do with her. Not to mention sleeping with her, even touching her would make me feel disgusted." "Enough." Su Qianxi interrupted him. "I do not want to hear this. Mr. Li, can you please leave?" Li Xiqing pursed his lips and did not move. His voice was still low and mellow but with clear frustration. "Why don't you believe me?" Su Qianxi pursed her lips and looked up at him. Clearly seeing the hurt in his eyes, she felt suffocated. Looking up at the ceiling, she said in a calm voice, "From the moment I found out that you lied to me, your credibility with me has been overdrawn." Li Xiqing's pupils contracted and his eyes narrowed. Lied to her? The first thing he thought of was the wound on his right arm. Subconsciously he looked sideways. Su Qianxi clearly noticed his movement and looked at his wound. It was a very long one and it seemed to be a bit deep. Some of the scabs had fallen off, revealing a bit of pink skin. It was very ugly, which ruined the beauty. It looked out of place under his healthy, wheat-colored skin. More than half a month ago Rong Rue cut it. Half a month, that is, when he was on a business trip? "I did not tell you because I did not want you to worry, so I lied to you that I was on a business trip and would come back to see you when the wound was better." "Was that so?" Su Qianxi suddenly felt a bit sad. Did she look so gullible? He must not have known that she saw him walk out of Tang Menjing's house with her own eyes. Soon after, Su Qianxi checked and found that the house had been transferred to Tang Menjing. A villa worth tens of millions was easily transferred to another woman. If there was no dirty transaction, who would believe it? Moreover, a genuine paternity test was enough to prove everything. Putting everything together, he was still delusional enough to think that she would continue to be deceived? Su Qianxi's eyelashes fluttered and she said quietly, "Well, get up. You're making me numb." Li Xiqing pursed his lips. Her cold eyes seemed to have shot him in the chest, leaving a bloody hole with blood gushing out. Her expression told him that she did not believe it. His injuries were right there, the severity was obvious, but why did she still not believe him? Was it really as she said? His credit rating had already been overdrawn? "I didn't do it on purpose. It's okay. Get up. It won't be numb after a while." "I was talking about the business trip." He did not mean to lie to her. If he knew that she would know, if he knew that she would misunderstand, he would rather let her worry and be in pain with him than see this. Su Qianxi paused, narrowed her eyes and said quietly, "It doesn't matter. Everyone has their own private life. From the beginning, I have written it clearly in the contract that we will not interfere in each other's private lives. You don't have to explain to me. She was thinking too much. Chapter 348. Su Qianxi. Li Xiqing was a bit annoyed and grabbed her chin. Don't talk about the contract. I will tear it up in a second. You should. Su Qianxi said sarcastically, the contract also says that we should keep our distance. Look at us now. We have already violated the contract. That thing should not exist. Li Xiqing regretted signing the contract. Gazing at her, he said word by word, forget about the contract. Tear it up and start over. You can tear it up. Anyway, what you have is just a copy. The original is with Sheng Shiming. He tightened his grip on her chin as if he was going to crush her. He said in a deep voice, then we will ask Sheng Shiming for it. It's useless, Li Xiqing. Su Qianxi looked at him and suddenly put her arms around his neck, pulling him close to her. She whispered, isn't that what you want? When the contract time is up, Tang Menjing's child will be born. At that time it will be the same with or without me, right? Tang Menjing, Tang Menjing. Tang Menjing again. Su Qianxi raised her head, kissed his Adam's apple and slightly opened her mouth. Li Xiqing's body slightly stiffened. Holding her tighter, he breathed faster. Su Qianxi's soft hand slowly moved down, and her voice was seductive as she said slowly, while we are still legally married and Tang Menjing is pregnant, the most important thing is to have fun, isn't it? All of Li Xiqing's feelings instantly collapsed. Grabbing her hand, he gritted his teeth and said, don't mention that name. Makes me sick. She also made him sick. Especially sick. Stop pretending. You obviously like it a lot. Su Qianxi slightly twisted her body and put her legs on his, saying sarcastically, or do you feel guilty for lying in another woman's bed while she gives birth to your child? Li Xiqing noticed her provocation and suddenly sneered. Su Qianxi felt a bit scared and paused. She subconsciously wanted to take her hand back, but he stopped her. He lowered his head and bit her collarbone. She gasped in pain and yelled, it hurts. However, he did not intend to stop. Instead, he bit her even harder. What are you doing? She was almost in tears. Are you a dog? Go away. To wake you up. Li Xiqing said breathlessly, then got out of bed. Su Qianxi watched him open the closet naked and take out a stack of things from the bottom drawer of the closet. Soon he stood up and threw her 2 red booklets. Marriage certificate. Opening one of the booklets, Li Xiqing knelt down and grabbed her face, looking at the photo on the marriage certificate. Feeling the pain, Su Qianxi subconsciously wanted to dodge. However, Li Xiqing's actions were extremely domineering. He put the marriage certificate in front of her and growled, look carefully. The person on it is you, Su Qianxi, not that Tang guy. Su Qianxi's face was hurting and she was about to cry, but she gritted her teeth and did not make a sound. Don't try to push me to another woman. I said she has nothing to do with me. Her due date is in March next year. Give me some more time, okay? Chapter 349. Hearing that, Su Qianxi looked away and did not speak. Her eyes were full of tears, but they did not fall. He gazed at her deeply, let go of her and said slowly, do you remember that you still owe me a favor last night? I remember it now. Su Qianxi finally looked over. Cancel the divorce contract. Cancel, cancel. The 2 simple words were like an echo, echoing in Su Qianxi's mind. Canceling it at this time undoubtedly meant that he wanted to stop her from thinking about divorce. If it was cancelled at this time, would they not get divorced? Would she be able to continue to be his wife? Li Xiqing clearly saw the emotion in her eyes. Sure enough, she did not want a divorce, right? Scenes suddenly appeared in Li Xiqing's mind, the way she looked when they just got married. Her love for him, her complicated feelings for him, and her fear of him were all clear. Now what was going on? Her eyes were full of sarcasm and disdain as well as hatred and disgust. When he found that her love was gone, he was at a loss of what to do. He still did not know what he had done wrong. However, he did not want to let go, did not want to divorce. Covering her face with his slightly rough hand, Li Xiqing gently rubbed it with his thumb and whispered, cancel the divorce contract and let's start over, okay? He was serious. Li Xiqing's eyes did not contain any impurities. They were so dark and pure that it made her heart flutter. However, could she? No. Su Qianxi reached out and wiped her eyes. Her eyes flashed, she looked at him and sneered, do you really think I am stupid? The divorce contract was the only thing that she had the upper hand in at the moment. If he couldn't even take the initiative, then what awaited him would be the real torture. What if he wanted to coax her to cancel the divorce contract and then force her to divorce directly? She knew very well how despicable this man was. She did not want to believe him. Never again. Hearing that, Li Xiqing slightly tightened his grip on her hand. He had never lowered himself to please a woman in this way. He was as low as the bottom of the dust, but what he got in return was a sneer from her. His eyes were as dark as ink, and the anger of humiliation was burning fiercely. Su Qianxi. She gritted her teeth, squeezing every word out. Her heart trembling, she flinched, but she still stiffened her neck, looked at him and sneered fearlessly. Are you angry? Li Xiqing's hand on her face started to pinch her cheeks, which made her frown in pain. I really want to strangle you, Li Xiqing said word by word. Choke her to death. Out of sight, out of mind. However, he was reluctant to do so. Gritting her teeth, she looked at him stubbornly. He closed his eyes and pushed her away. Throwing the red booklet on the floor, he got out of bed and walked into the bathroom. The sound of running water came from the bathroom. She collapsed on the bed and let out a long sigh of relief. What she was most afraid of was how he looked when he lost his temper. No matter in her previous lifetime or this lifetime. Chapter 350. On her collarbone there was a row of teeth marks. Feeling it with her fingers, Su Qianxi felt a bit of pain. He had bitten her so hard. After the shower, she wrapped herself in a towel and put on a thin turtleneck sweater. It was rare for her to put on a pair of pants and tie her hair into a ponytail. When she walked out of the door, it was already past 11 a.m. She saw Li Xiqing walking out of Grandpa's room. Seeing Su Qianxi's new outfit, Li Xiqing's eyes froze for a second and quickly looked away, walking toward the door. Su Qianxi stopped in the same place, watching him pass by her, and her mood was surprisingly peaceful. When Li Xiqing walked out of the living room, his phone rang. Su Qianxi keenly noticed that he seemed to have changed his phone. This was not the model he had used before. He answered the call and walked out. Su Qianxi followed him, holding her bag and keeping a certain distance from him. She did not know what was said on the other side of the phone, but Su Qianxi noticed that Li Xiqing's mood did not seem to be right. He said, "You must protect it." He drove away, not intending to take Su Qianxi with him. Su Qianxi did not want to get in his car at all. She stopped the taxi and gave the driver Song Yifun's address. However, she always felt something was not right. What did he mean by protect just now? Tang Minjing's child? Feeling a pain in her heart, Su Qianxi thought it over and over again and said, "Sir," to Jiangzhou. The driver looked a bit impatient. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" It was completely the opposite direction. Although dissatisfied, he still turned around and drove toward the Jiangzhou villas. When the car was near the Jiangzhou villas, Su Qianxi immediately saw the low-key luxurious black Maybach. She had expected it, but she was still disappointed. The last bit of hope in her heart had completely disappeared. Reality was like a stepmother, giving her 2 fiery slaps in the face. It was really interesting to lie to her, wasn't it? Su Qianxi's eyes were cold and her heart was cold. Let's go back to Yifeng Pavilion. Laurel was anxious. No one had expected that Tang Minjing would hit the wall with her stomach. With such a collision, the 30 to 40 people in the villa were all in a mess. However, Laurel was someone who had experienced great storms. In Star City he had seen much more storms than this. He sent her back to her room, called the doctor, and then called Li Xiqing. Tang Minjing thought that they would send her to the hospital no matter what. In this way the child could be aborted and she could go out and ask for help, telling others that she was imprisoned. However, she had never expected that he would be so considerate as to hire several doctors and set up an emergency room in his home. Seeing a dozen pairs of eyes staring at her, Tang Minjing felt she was going crazy. For a whole half a month she had no freedom at all. He was watched when he went to the toilet, when he bathed, and when he ate. He was even worse than a prisoner. Other than Munaz Manthis, the others were all mute. No one was there to talk to her and she could not make any phone calls. In addition, the place was remote, so there was no one to help her. Everyone was glad that the child was saved. But for Tang Minjing it was the worst news. Chapter 351. After returning from the old house, Su Qianxi devoted herself to her studies and work, so she was very busy. Lu Yihan's business skills were getting better and better. In just over a month he had officially launched the Qianlu software, and the number of downloads and users was very high. As a shareholder, Su Qianxi had also received a very good income. The weather was getting colder and colder and Su Qianxi was wearing more and more clothes. The winter solstice was a day of reunion. Song Yifan was still in London and could not return to China to reunite with her. However, the old house called her early and asked her to go to the old house for the holiday. It was raining heavily, and the winter solstice was destined to be wet. Su Qianxi drove her new white car and was stuck on the highway. Looking at the time, it was already past 2 p.m. She did not know what was going on in front of her, but the traffic was still. The sound of horns kept ringing, annoying her. Her phone rang and it was from the old house. Su Qianxi picked up the phone and said, "Hello. Madam, are you here yet?" "Not yet. Today is the winter solstice and the traffic is stuck." Su Qianxi glanced out of the window. It was still raining heavily. "Oh, are you with the second young master?" The old man said he wanted to eat the meat that the second young master bought before. "What meat?" "I don't know. The old man can't tell. Anyway, it's delicious. The second young master knows. You can call him and ask." "Let her call?" Su Qianxi pursed her lips and said, "Lu Sa, please call him. It's not convenient for me right now." "Oh, I've tried, but I don't know what's going on. I can't get through to him. I'm very busy now. Grandpa is playing with Mr. Air and the others. I have to follow him to finish up." Someone seemed to be calling Lu Sa. Lu Sa responded loudly, "Oh, I'll be right there." Then she said to Su Qianxi again, "Thank you. If you can't get through, let me call the second young master after I'm done. I'm just afraid that the old man might be anxious." "Okay," Su Qianxi agreed. "Go ahead. I'll call him." "Okay, thanks. Remember to come back early. Mr. Air's family is here too." "Okay." She hung up the phone and the road was still blocked. Looking through the address book, she found that the number was nowhere to be found. She had to click on the keyboard and press the number. Her movements were so smooth that there was no pause. After dialing it out, she suddenly realized that she had finished dialing it. She had remembered this number for 2 lifetimes. The line was busy. I really couldn't get through. The car in front finally moved slowly. Su Qianxi started the car and called Cheng Yu. Cheng Yu quickly answered the phone, and Su Qianxi learned that Cheng Yu had returned to her hometown for the holiday. "It's only 3 o'clock now. He must still be in the company. Why don't you go to the company to look for him?" Thank you. If boss sees you go to him, he'll definitely be very happy." Su Qianxi curled her lips and said self-deprecatingly, "Really?" "Of course. You don't know, but boss has been in a terrible mood recently. He's been working overtime every day. Everyone in the company is so scared that they don't dare to make a sound. They're afraid that they'll offend him if they say anything wrong. Even I have to apply for annual leave to go home." From the looks of it, it was indeed very bad. Was it because of her? If he saw her, would he feel even worse? Wan Lily, everyone who is scolding her, please put yourself in her shoes. Your husband is pregnant with someone else and the blood test is also there. The evidence is conclusive. Several times when you decided to believe him, you found that he was lying to you. Twice when you saw him with the mistress, you would happily say, "Oh, I believe you, I love you." Would it? To be honest, only Su Qianxi would do that. If I had a bad temper, I would definitely find someone to beat up my husband and the mistress, and then sue him until he left the family with nothing. You have the God's perspective, of course you know everything, but Chanshan doesn't. So, how can you say that she is pretentious? How can you say that she doesn't believe Mr. Li? Mr. Li's EQ is low, and Su Qianxi feels inferior. All of you can see that. My character has been set from the beginning and I will not change it. Chapter 352. Ahem. Cheng Yu found that she seemed to be talking too much. If Li Xiqing found out that she had sold him out, he would definitely exploit her. "Well, madam, don't say these things to him. Just keep it between us." Su Qianxi smiled. "Okay, goodbye." "Goodbye." Hanging up the phone, she took a long breath. Madam, in her previous lifetime, Cheng Yu had always called her madam. After the divorce, she called her Miss Su. Madam seemed to be a good name. She drove off the highway. Coincidentally, the road she was on was very close to Li Xiqing's company. Following her memory, she drove to Li Xiqing's company. In less than 2 minutes, she saw the building with a unique shape. The Li Group was also one of the landmarks in Kingstown. Su Qianxi stopped the car and walked in. The receptionist recognized her at a glance and said, "Madam." Although it was the first time that Su Qianxi had come to Li Xiqing's company, her name and appearance could be recognized by everyone in Kingstown. Su Qianxi smiled and asked, "I am looking for Li Xiqing. The president is in the conference room on the top floor. You can go directly to the special elevator here." "Thank you." Su Qianxi went directly to the top floor and was very familiar with the layout. In her previous lifetime she had been here many times. Walking in easily, the people in the secretary's office were slightly surprised to see her. However, they all knew who she was. They hurriedly took her to Li Xiqing's office and gave her the best coffee. "Boss is in a meeting. Do you want me to go inform him?" A secretary said. "There's no need. I'll wait here for a while. You go ahead with your work." "Thank you." "You are welcome. I will go first." "Thank you." The secretary looked at her and was so excited that her face was flushed. Before the door was completely closed, the secretary screamed, "She is so beautiful." Su Chenxi curled her lips and took a sip of the coffee. She felt inexplicably nervous. When he came over later and saw her, would he be surprised? Would he be surprised? What should she say? "Long time no see? Hello." It seemed a bit strange. Her heart racing, she suddenly regretted listening to Cheng Yu and coming here to find him. Would he think that she was here to express her goodwill to him, so she purposely came to see him? However, she only came to his company because she couldn't get through to her grandfather's phone. If he misunderstood, it would be very awkward, right? Was it too late to leave now? She was a bit hesitant. After some consideration, she stood up and walked to the door of the office. However, as soon as she walked in, the door was suddenly opened. She was caught off guard and hit by the doorknob. Su Chenxi screamed and squatted down, covering where she was hit. There was obvious astonishment in Li Xiqing's eyes. Looking at the petite figure squatting and groaning on the ground, he thought he was hallucinating. However, when she looked up at him, his heart was hit hard. It really was her. Su Chenxi clearly felt Li Xiqing's cold gaze on her. Blushing, she covered her lower abdomen and did not dare to get up. Pain, pain, pain. Of all places to hit, she hit the bone there. A disease called embarrassment instantly broke out and no medicine could cure it. Seeing her painful face, Li Xiqing resisted the urge to check where she was hurting and whispered, "What's wrong?" Chapter 353. Li Xiqing's cold face suddenly cracked. "You do." Su Chenxi's face became even redder. She stood up and said in pain, "Why didn't you knock before coming in?" "It hurts." This action was a bit obscene, and Li Xiqing couldn't help but look at it. He said calmly, "This is my office." Su Chenxi was suddenly speechless. Feeling his gaze, she immediately turned around and rubbed her wound with her coat. Li Xiqing was speechless and said in a low voice, "Mind your image." Then he closed the door and walked to the desk. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you," Su Chenxi said matter-of-factly. "Grandpa said he wanted to eat the meat you bought for him last time, but he couldn't get through. Lusa asked me to find you and take it back." Su Chenxi said matter-of-factly, but she soon realized something was wrong. Li Xiqing glanced at the phone on the desk. There were more than 30 missed calls. Picking up the phone, he found that most of them were business calls. Only 3 of them were from the old house and her. Picking up the phone, Li Xiqing said quietly, "Got it." "Okay." His attitude made Su Chenxi feel a bit disappointed. She stood up and felt that it was not very painful anymore. Picking up her bag on the sofa, she said, "Then I'll go." "Sit down." Li Xiqing did not look up. "Let's go together later." "No, I have my own car." However, Li Xiqing had already walked over and pressed her down again. Su Chenxi wanted to say something, but she saw him make a gesture to keep quiet. Then he said in fluent English, "So busy." After the meeting he had to return calls. Su Chenxi wanted to get up but was held down by his hand. Her heart fluttered. Did he want to make her stay? With this idea, Su Chenxi felt a bit restless. Sitting on the sofa, she pretended to be calm. When he finished the call, it was already more than 10 minutes later. Su Chenxi looked at him and asked, "Why don't you let me go?" Looking at her with his deep eyes, Li Xiqing's expression was a bit cold. "It's a holiday. Let Grandpa be happy." Su Chenxi felt her heart was soaked with vinegar, feeling a bit disappointed. So that was it. Indeed, Grandpa was already so old and he couldn't bear to see his children and grandchildren quarrel. Grandpa knew that she had been in a cold war with him for more than a month. Suddenly, an inexplicable possibility popped up in his mind. Did Grandpa do it on purpose today? Li Xiqing glanced at her and picked up her bag. "Let's go." He was already out of the door and she followed him. Clearly aware of the envious eyes of the secretaries, she gradually slowed down. Wouldn't he be unhappy? In his previous life, he hated it the most when she walked around him ostentatiously. Given their current situation, would they? Thinking of that, she had slowed down a lot, watching him walk fast, deliberately keeping a distance from him. Li Xiqing pressed the elevator button and found that she was not behind him. When he turned around, he saw the hesitation in her eyes. He arched an eyebrow and his eyes darkened. He said unhappily, "Do you want me to go over and hug you?" The secretaries jeered and Su Chenxi's face instantly blushed. She trotted quickly in her high heels and followed him into the elevator. At the moment when the elevator door closed, Su Chenxi heard a voice. "This is so happy." Chapter 354. At the moment when the elevator door closed, Su Chenxi heard a voice. "This is so happy." The elevator door closed, cutting off all the sound. Su Chenxi sighed. It turned out that in their eyes she was also happy. However, why could she not feel it herself? Instead, she was full of sadness. "Where is your car?" The sudden voice made Su Chenxi a bit dazed, but she quickly reacted and replied, "At the door." Li Xiqing heard that and pressed the first floor button. Silence. The elevator was so quiet. The only thing he could hear was the sound of the elevator descending. Ding. When the elevator reached the first floor, Li Xiqing walked out first, followed by Su Chenxi. Many people looked at them. Su Chenxi was a bit nervous, following Li Xiqing with her head slightly lowered. Suddenly, Li Xiqing stopped and Su Chenxi did not stop and bumped into him. Su Chenxi covered her nose, and the soreness made her tear up. Looking up, her eyes were full of accusation. Li Xiqing glanced at her casually and took an umbrella from the umbrella rack on the side. A big umbrella. When she arrived, the rain was much lighter. The car was parked at the door. She had just run in without an umbrella. But now the rain had resumed and the road was flooded with water. People were in a hurry. Just as she was about to reach for an umbrella, he grabbed her hand and pulled her forward without any explanation. "Hey, wait." Su Chenxi was almost carried under his arm, and her feet were a bit unsteady in her high heels. Li Xiqing did not listen and dragged her forward. After opening the big umbrella, he put his arm around her neck and walked to her car. Su Chenxi was a bit dazed. How did he know that this car was hers? He should have never seen it. They had not seen each other for so long. "Open the door." Li Xiqing glanced at her. "It's raining hard. It's cold." She quickly unlocked the door. Li Xiqing opened the driver's door but did not get in. Instead, he looked at her. Su Chenxi immediately understood and got in. Closing the door, he went to the passenger seat and sat down. However, as soon as he sat down, his eyebrows furrowed and he said with dissatisfaction, "Why is it so small? How can it be compared to yours?" She muttered and slowly started the car. "I'll get you a bigger one later. I like small ones." The rain was so heavy that she could not see clearly, so she turned on the headlights. "I'm not feeling well." Li Xiqing looked disgusted. "It's fine as long as I like it. Why do you care so much? I thought you were used to my big ones." When she was about to argue, she suddenly thought of something. Blushing, she glared at him and yelled, "Li Xiqing, you pervert." Li Xiqing raised an eyebrow and looked at her with some confusion. "I was talking about the size of the car. What are you thinking about?" She paused and blushed even more. Clearly seeing the mockery in his eyes, she angrily smashed the steering wheel and turned around. Li Xiqing slowly fastened the seat belt and said slowly, "Don't you think it's better to have a big one?" Her hands trembling, she roared, "Can you shut up?" You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.